Chapter 13:16. Hualing and Turin fell to the ground and immediately crawled over. Their hands grabbed onto their master's feet, stopping him from moving forward. "Master, please think twice before you act. Don't be impulsive. The little princess is still waiting for you to bring her back." Turin looked up from the water with pleading eyes. Hualing also begged, "Master, the little princess has been taken away. This subordinate is also very anxious, but please calm down. There is no benefit in breaking into the imperial palace." Xiao Su's hands clenched into fists as his veins popped out. The rain fell on his body, but it did not dampen the anger in his heart and the sadness that came from his heart. That was because they did not know that his conversation with his imperial father today was that his imperial father wanted to steal the little fellow from his side. He already could not control himself at this time. If he did not see the little fellow, he would not be able to feel at ease. Let go. Otherwise, don't blame this king for hurting you. When Xiao Su's words fell, the two of them hugged even tighter. His heart sank as he raised his foot to throw the two of them away. He walked out the door without looking back. He thought that his words would move his good friend, but he never thought that it would make him even more irritable. Lin Fengyi was a bit stunned as he looked at him. That person who was always indomitable and never showed any emotion would actually lose himself like this one day. He was like a wild beast on the verge of exploding, like he had never met him before. Looking at it now, Chu Qingyan was not here, so Evie did not have the confidence to stop him. "What are you all in a daze for? Go and stop him. Do you want to watch him cause a disaster?" Lin Fengyi's words made the stunned, fierce cavalry come back to their senses, and they all went forward to block the door. The rain became heavier and the wind howled in the yard. The wind mixed with the rain fell on everyone's bodies. Xiao Su looked up at the people in front of him and angrily reprimanded, "Even you all want to disobey this king's orders now." Turin and Hualing crawled up from the ground with apologetic eyes, not daring to look up at him. Xiao Su didn't look at them again and walked straight to the gate. Xiao Lai's cavalry did not dare to attack their master and could only stand in front of him like a meat wall. Xiao Su was furious and attacked in anger. Xiao Lai's cavalry only defended and did not attack. Very quickly, a large number of them fell. However, they were like cockroaches that could not be killed. When someone fell, another would stand up. Very quickly, the black-clothed, fierce cavalry were all stained with mud. They were battered and exhausted, but no one retreated a single step. In the last move, Xiao Su knocked everyone down. When he lifted his foot again, two figures suddenly appeared in front of him. After seeing them clearly, Xiao Su stopped. "Su, stop fighting. It's not suitable for you to enter the palace like this. You'll lose your life before you can rescue Kai Kai. That's not what we want to see, and neither is it what Kai Kai wants to see." Chu Mu's mother supported Chu Mu's father. Although her expression was sad, her eyes were filled with worry and love as she looked at him. Chu Mu's father also jumped up at this time. He pointed at his son-in-law's nose and scolded, "Cut the onion. Father asked you to think of a way to save Kai Kai, not to send you to your death. Why are you so stupid? Kai Kai is so smart. She'll be fine for a while. Go back and change your clothes. Think of a way for father. Don't hit white impermanence and black impermanence. Otherwise, they'll really go accompany King Yama and ignore you." But Xiao Su still wanted to refute, but was interrupted by Chu Mu's father. "There are no buts. We don't even know what they want to do now. How can we talk about saving people? On the battlefield, you can only win 100 battles if you know yourself and your enemy. You like this, not only do we have to worry about Kai Kai, we also have to worry about you. When did you become so worrisome?" Chu Mu's father said angrily as he dragged him under the eaves. Although he said so much in one breath, and all of it was scolding Xiao Su, everyone could hear the concern and disappointment in his words. Chu Mu's father was really reliable when he wasn't being silly. However, his coolness didn't last more than 3 seconds. "Father, I don't want this irritable cut the onion. Hurry up and change that ice lolly son-in-law back. Change him back. Open sesame. Change him back." Everyone was stunned. However, after this ordeal, Xiao Su slowly regained his rationality, but his expression was even colder. He looked at Chu Mu's father and mother and said calmly, "Please don't worry. Xiao Su will definitely bring Ian back unscathed." Chu Mu's mother nodded in relief. This was someone Kai Kai trusted, and she trusted him as well. Chu Mu's father rubbed his chin and nodded. "That's my ice lolly's son-in-law." Xiao Su ordered the two of them to be sent back to the courtyard. He then turned to look at the people who were standing in the rain, covered in mud. They looked battered and exhausted, but their eyes were shining. He waved his hand and said, "Go back and change your clothes. We'll discuss this later." "Yes," everyone replied loudly and quickly left. Lin Fengyi walked to Xiao Su's side. He shook his head when he saw that Xiao Su was drenched and had a cold expression. "I thought no one would be able to stop you. I didn't expect Miss Chu's parents to be the most influential. I was rash just now." Xiao Su's expression was cold. Raindrops fell from his silver mask like crisscrossing scars, but it was inexplicably chilling. Lin Fengyi's heart ached when he saw Chu Mu's expression. "You said that you didn't even bat an eyelid when facing the enemy's traps. I thought that even if the sky fell, you would remain unmoved. I didn't expect you to have such an impulsive side. What should I say about you?" Even a usually cultured and refined Lin Fengyi couldn't help but criticize him. Xiao Su was silent for a while before he slowly said, his voice full of desolation, "Fengyi, you don't understand. Ian is different from those people. So what if the sky falls? I've never taken it to heart. However, if I lose myself, how different am I from a walking corpse?" Lin Fengyi stared at his good friend's back as he left. He couldn't help but be stunned. Every step he took seemed to be stepping on the ground, but in reality, it was as if he was stepping on his heart. Hua Xiao, who had been acting as a vase for the entire afternoon, let out a long sigh. Her face was full of surprise as she said to the person beside her, "I didn't expect His Highness to have such deep feelings for Qingyan. It's even deeper than I thought." She knew that Xiao Su loved Qingyan to the bone, but she always thought that Xiao Su was a calm person who wouldn't change when things happened. Nothing could make him lose his composure. Until today, when she saw him lose control, she realized that Xiao Su's love for someone could be so passionate. He's a very righteous person. He's not as cold as he appears on the surface. However, Lin Fengyi's voice was full of emotion. "I also didn't expect that Chu Qingyan would be so important in his life, no, in his soul." If he didn't guess wrong, when he said that he lost himself, he was referring to Chu Qingyan. She was his life, the meaning of his life. Chapter 13-17. After Chu Qingyan entered the palace, she was arranged to stay in one of the halls. Because she rarely entered the palace, she didn't recognize which part of the palace she was in. However, she could tell that it wasn't too remote and wasn't some cold palace. When she entered the hall, Mama Jiang said that she would first go and report to Imperial Concubine Yu, and then she left. After she left for a while, Ji Yanshu felt very bored and began to examine the structure of the hall. In reality, she was observing the guards around her. She discovered that the surroundings were heavily guarded and the palace guard were patrolling back and forth. Even if a fly flew in, they would be able to see it. Ji Yanshu couldn't help but frown. She was just a normal person. So why did Consort you have to watch over her like this? It was as if she was looking at a prisoner. She was also accompanied by the 4 maidservants who never left her side. She didn't have any personal freedom at all. Ji Yanshu originally didn't look forward to seeing Consort Yu, but now she wanted to see her immediately and let her go back as soon as possible. She didn't want to stay in this deserted place. Waiting was torturous, so she had to find something to do. Thus, she found a few books on her desk. Precepts for Women, The 3 Obediences, and 4 Virtues. What the hell was this? Ji Yanshu's mouth twitched, and she dismissed the idea of reading. She decided to be a quiet beauty. After she calmed down, her 5 senses became very sensitive. There was a faint fragrance in the air that was very pleasant. She could distinguish some of the fragrances such as jasmine and cold plum. What else was there? Ji Yanshu suddenly felt that her head was a bit heavy. How could it be? The 4 palace maids who had been closely watching Chu Qingyan saw that she was lying on the table and immediately walked over to her and brought her to bed. "This way, she shouldn't cause a ruckus," said one of the palace maids. Yes, she's too smart. Fortunately, we brought this incense. It can at least make her sleep until dawn, said another palace maid. Not long after, someone from the Moon Palace came to find out what had happened. When they found out that Chu Qingyan had fallen asleep, they returned to report. It's best if she doesn't make a fuss. Tomorrow, this consort will meet her. If she's tactful, this consort will arrange for her to meet with Ranner. Consort Yu had just returned to the palace when she heard the news. She snorted coldly and told them to take good care of her. After they left, Mama Jiang stepped forward to massage her master's shoulders. Nyang Nyang, is it really feasible for us to trick Chu Qingyan into the palace like this? The King of England is not an easy person to deal with. Consort Yu smiled when she heard Jiang Mama's worried words. She picked up her teacup and slowly took a sip before closing the lid. Did you think that Ben Consort would be so stupid as to directly confront Xiao Su? This time, this consort has dragged His Majesty down with her. With His Majesty as her backer, Xiao Su won't cause trouble for this consort. This old one is slow-witted. What does your highness mean? Mama Jiang was still confused. Consort Yu was currently in a good mood, so she wasn't stingy with her explanation. A few days ago, for some reason, His Majesty suddenly flew into a rage in the imperial study. He then found Ranner and promised to help him dissolve the engagement between Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan. Today, His Majesty suddenly summoned Xiao Su into the palace. Even if you think about it with your fingers, it's obvious what His Majesty's goal is. Now that this consort has brought Chu Qingyan into the palace, regardless of whether His Majesty or Xiao Su pursues the matter, this consort will use Ranner's illness as an excuse. This way, His Majesty won't be able to bear to punish this consort, but Xiao Su will think that this consort has been instructed by His Majesty and will only target His Majesty. His Majesty originally wanted to force Xiao Su and see how much ability he has after enduring for so many years. It's just a pity that His Majesty is indecisive, so this consort decided to do a good deed and give him a push. At this time, it's hard to get off a tiger, and His Majesty has no choice but to focus on dealing with Xiao Su. At this point, Consort Yu revealed a sinister smile. Once a trapped beast is forced into a desperate situation, it will definitely counterattack. However, this consort is very curious as to what exactly it will be like. Mama Jiang suddenly understood. No wonder your highness had us go and fetch the King of England when he entered the palace. So this was your intention. That's right. When the time comes, Xiao Su will think that this is just His Majesty's plan to lure the tiger away from the mountain. As a result, Xiao Su's resentment towards His Majesty will only increase. In any case, His Majesty doesn't like him, so just let them fight as they please. Consort Yu was very pleased. As long as she got rid of Xiao Su, then Ranner wouldn't be able to run away from the position of heir apparent. She would also be able to satisfy his wish of getting Chu Qingyan. When the time came, with the beauty in his arms, there was no need to worry that he wouldn't obediently inherit the throne. Your Highness is wise. Mama Jiang immediately flattered her. Consort Yu was very pleased with herself as she slowly drank her tea. This time, she was definitely going to get rid of Xiao Su, this eyesore, and ruthlessly slap Empress Liang in the face. When the time came, she would bring glory to the Fu family and become the master of the harem. At the same time, a man wearing black battle clothes quickly walked towards the imperial study. A moment later, he appeared in front of Sichuan Emperor. General Li Weiyuan pays his respects to His Majesty. Long live His Majesty! Sichuan Emperor couldn't help but smile at the return of his most trusted subordinate. Minister Li, there's no need to be so courteous. The journey must have been very tiring. Stand up and speak. Thank you, Your Majesty. Li Weiyuan stood up. Only then did Sichuan Emperor notice the bloodstains on his battle clothes. He couldn't help but frown. Minister, why are you in such a sorry state? Li Weiyuan cupped his hands and said, Your Majesty, I was just about to report this matter to you. When I was passing by Fengtai Mountain, I encountered two parties fighting. One of them was His Highness, the Third Prince. Prince C? What's going on? Sichuan Emperor immediately narrowed his eyes. I don't know the cause. I only know that His Highness the Third Prince was attacked by unknown assassins on his way to Hugwood Temple. They were few in number. If I didn't arrive in time, I'm afraid His Highness the Third Prince. Li Weiyuan recalled the scene and shook his head. How is Prince Yi now? Prince Yi's carriage fled in the chaos, but it was blocked on the road. Prince Yi was seriously injured and unconscious. I've sent him back to the prince's mansion for treatment, Li Weiyuan replied. That's good. Did you catch those assassins? Although he didn't care much about this son of his, he was still one of the few princes in the imperial family. Sichuan Emperor still asked. He was relieved to know that Prince Yi had returned to the prince's mansion for treatment. These people are very cunning. I didn't catch them. They even took away the bodies of their companions. They didn't even leave a trace at the scene. How abominable, Li Weiyuan said angrily. How dare they sneak attack a prince and defy the imperial power? How audacious! I'll give you full authority to investigate this matter. You must catch these people and bring them to justice. Sichuan Emperor was furious and immediately gave the order. Yes, Li Weiyuan accepted the order. He hesitated for a moment and said, Your Majesty, I feel like I've seen these assassins before. Chapter 13:18. The people who had freshened up were all gathered in the study. The storm outside had already lessened, the thunder had also disappeared, and the world was soaked in cool and moist air. However, the study at this time gave people the illusion that they were in an ice cellar. Everyone looked at each other, but did not dare to look at the source of the coldness. Everyone knew that their master was in a bad mood right now, so no one dared to provoke him. However, everyone looked at Lin Fengyi, who was sitting at the side. These gazes made Lin Fengyi feel like he was sitting on pins and needles. He had a headache. These people really knew how to find scapegoats. However, if even he remained silent at this time, he was afraid that his good friend, who was immersed in his own thoughts, would freeze them to death. Xiao Su, tell me what happened when you entered the palace today. Also, why was Miss Chu taken away? Lin Fengyi asked everyone's questions. Xiao Su only came back to his senses when he heard the voice. He put away the true emotions in his eyes and looked at everyone indifferently. In front of him, other than Lin Fengyi, there were his confidants, Turin, Hualing, Muling, Ethereal, and Water Spirit, who had rushed over after hearing the commotion. These people in front of him were not his good friends of many years, but his subordinates who had followed him for more than 10 years. Feeling their sincere concern, his heart that was like an ice cellar finally warmed up a little. He recalled the conversation between his imperial father and him in the imperial study today, and his expression instantly turned cold. Imperial father wants to cancel the engagement between this prince and Ayan. If this prince does not agree, he will investigate the matter of Ayan disguising herself as a man to join the army and deceiving the emperor. When these words came out, everyone was in an uproar. Why does His Majesty want to cancel the engagement between Master and the young princess? How ridiculous! Back then, His Majesty made the decree himself. Why is he going back on his words for no reason? Going back on his words. This is simply too much. Turin, Hualing, and the others were like ignited firecrackers, exploding in an instant. Not only Xiao Lai-Chi, even Lin Fengyi, who was calm and collected, couldn't help but be stunned. He muttered, Xiao Su, your imperial father isn't joking, right? Xiao Su glanced at him indifferently. Do you think I'm the kind of person who would joke around? These words made Lin Fengyi shut his mouth immediately, but at the same time, his face showed confusion. Why is Your Majesty doing this? This was very puzzling. You should know the reason. Lin Fengyi's words successfully attracted the gazes of the fierce cavalry, who were filled with righteous indignation. Each of them widened their eyes as they stared at their master's answer. Xiao Su was silent for a moment before he slowly said, Because of Xiao Ran. Fourth Prince. Everyone was baffled, but there was one person who understood. I know, Xiao walked out. When she spoke, everyone looked at her in unison. She raised her head, her face not having the usual playfulness. Her voice was mocking as she said, Xiao Ran has a crush on your little Wang Fei, but your little Wang Fei and His Highness have such a good relationship. How could she like him? Therefore, Xiao Ran went to His Majesty and came up with a devious idea. He asked His Majesty to help him break off the engagement so that he could snatch her away by force. He's simply a living scumbag. It's simply disgusting. Lin Fengyi facepalmed. Where did you learn this play from? You even made it up so well. Hua Xiao broke her facade in a second and immediately argued. That's what the novels say. Because of love, hate. And when you can't love, you destroy it and then reap the benefits. Lin Fengyi shook his head, but from the corner of his eyes, he saw his good friend's gloomy face. His heart thumped. Xiao Su, did Hua Xiao really hit the nail on the head? Xiao Su remained silent, but everyone was stunned on the spot. Someone's fist could be heard cracking in the air. Despicable. The fierce cavalry and the others were furious. They wanted nothing more than to tear Xiao Ran apart. But what pained them the most was Sichuan Emperor's actions. For so many years, His Majesty had been biased towards the fourth prince. As long as it was something that belonged to their master, he would take it away and steal it away. They originally thought that the fourth prince's heart wasn't bad, and their master valued him so much. They didn't expect that he would bite the hand that fed him, and His Majesty always burned the bridge after crossing the river. Whenever he needed their master, he would summon them without any guilt. If he didn't need them, he would casually throw them to a corner. As outsiders, they felt that it was too unbearable not to mention their master. The pain and suffering he had endured was far more than they could imagine. Too biased, too biased. Aren't they both sons? How can they be like this? Hua Xiao jumped on the side. At this time, Xiao Su slowly said, Ian once said that people's hearts are biased. It's not surprising. When the people present heard this, they could clearly feel the sadness in these words. Even their moods couldn't help but fall. Lin Feng lowered his eyebrows and thought for a moment. Then he raised his head and said with a serious expression, Xiao Su, your imperial father wanted you to dissolve the marriage on your own because he didn't want to be cursed as an incapable ruler who goes back on his words. But thinking about it carefully, he didn't need to take such a big risk to offend you. To put it bluntly, your imperial father, who has 3,000 beauties in his harem, shouldn't care about women. You and Xiao Ran are brothers, so he shouldn't interfere in your matters. Because in his eyes, you're just a woman. There's nothing to fight over. After so many years, if I still don't understand my imperial father, then I've lived in vain. Xiao Su chuckled. Everyone looked at each other in confusion. Why did it feel like the study was even colder? However, he restrained his smile and said in a low voice, he always suspected that I had a rebellious heart. Dissolving the marriage was just a test. He wanted to see if I would resist, and if I did, to what extent I would resist. If I didn't resist and followed his wishes, then it would help Xiao Ran. No matter what the result was, he wouldn't lose anything. When he finished speaking, the room fell into a dead silence. Everyone's face was full of anger. Is His Majesty forcing you to rebel? Lin Feng was shocked. Although it was one thing to guess before, it was another thing to have it confirmed. I always knew that he couldn't tolerate me, but I didn't expect him to use such a method. Xiao Su sneered, the corners of his mouth curling up in a mocking smile. Such a despicable and disgusting method. He had been like this since he was young. He hadn't improved at all. Everyone present, except for Lin Feng, probably didn't notice that Xiao Su's aura had changed after he sat down in the study. It was as if the aura that had been suppressed in the past had suddenly been unsealed. It made people lose the courage to even look at him directly. Most importantly, even the respect he had for the Sichuan Emperor had disappeared. When he spoke, there was less respect and more coldness. Lin Feng raised his head to look at the person sitting at the head of the table. His expression was covered by a mask. His entire body seemed to be soaked in a cold pool, emitting cold air. That pair of black eyes that were usually calm and indifferent now carried a destructive aura. Lin Feng couldn't help but be stunned. Chapter 1319. Lin Fengyi was slightly taken aback. He couldn't help but recall many years ago when Xiao Su first gained fame on the battlefield. One day, he saw his friend covered in scars and learned that the Sichuan emperor had sent him to the most dangerous place to fight the enemy. At that time, Xiao was only 15 or 16 years old. He was still a child. He said resentfully, "When will you live for yourself?" He clearly remembered his friend's answer. "When I give up." When he gave up on that blood relationship. All this time, he thought that he would never be able to wait for that day. He didn't expect that today he would finally see it. However, this kind of Xiao Su made his heart ache. He couldn't help but think that there was nothing more sorrowful than a dead heart. Because of his friend's stubbornness toward family, he swallowed all the grievances and unwillingness and bore them without any complaints or regrets. Back then, he was sent to the most dangerous mission for some unknown crime. He was thrown to the furthest border and had a narrow escape. Every day, his life was on the line. He didn't take these to heart because he didn't care. However, Chu Qingyin's appearance made up for his lack of familial love and allowed him to find the meaning of life once again. That was why his friend said today that if there was no Chu Qingyin, he would live like a walking corpse. However, his own family forced him to this point and took away the person he cared about the most. His Majesty probably never expected that Xiao Su would no longer be the child who could be bullied by others. Because once a person had someone he wanted to protect and an untouchable bottom line, he would resolutely cut off the fetters and be reborn to face the enemy head-on. This time, His Majesty probably wouldn't have a good ending like before. At the same time, he was very gratified. Finally, he didn't have to see his friend who didn't fight back when he was hit or scolded. "Master, are we really going to swallow this humiliation this time?" Huo Ling asked softly. At this time, Xiao Su was as cold as ice. However, the person who spoke was even colder. Ian once said, "If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I won't let them off." In the past, I didn't care about these things. Now that I've been bullied to this extent, I don't want to endure it any longer. Let me ask you, are you willing to fight against the world with me? Originally, everyone was still trying to restrain their anger. However, when their master asked them this question, they no longer wanted to suppress their anger. After so many years of resentment towards the Sichuan emperor, they no longer wanted to suppress it. "We'll deal with whoever master says." Even if the heavenly king himself came, I, Huo Ling, would still beat him up. Your Majesty is really going too far. Do you really think that we, the fierce wind cavalry, are pushovers? You'll have to ask if Turin's Qilin sword agrees or not. If we can't even protect our little princess consort, how will we have the face to travel to other countries? Water spirit doesn't allow anyone to bully girls. A doctor's hand can bring back the dead. However, when our own people are in danger, we can also kill them without leaving a trace. Long spears, short swords, cannons, and explosives. As long as I, Turin, am here, Master, you just have to say the word, and I'll definitely make them for you. If these words were heard by the people from the imperial court, they would definitely be scared witless. These people were too bold. They actually dared to speak so arrogantly and look down on the imperial power. However, many people might have misunderstood the fierce wind cavalry. They might think that they were born to protect the country and the common people. However, the fierce wind cavalry wasn't loyal to the imperial court or the common people. They were loyal to Xiao Su, their master. This was also one of the reasons why the Sichuan emperor was so afraid of them. If one day, everyone in the Sichuan Empire raised their swords at Xiao Su, then the fierce wind cavalry wouldn't hesitate to draw their swords. Even if the entire Sichuan Empire was destroyed, they wouldn't even blink an eye. In the eyes of the fierce wind cavalry, their hearts didn't care about the country. They could fight for the survival of the Sichuan Empire without hesitation. They could sacrifice their lives to protect the common people. However, this was only because their master wanted to do it. They would accompany him and protect the common people. In other words, the fierce wind cavalry was born for Xiao Su. They would die for Xiao Su. Even if the emperor was pressuring them, they would only listen to Xiao Su's orders. When the emperor appointed the marriage, who didn't know that he was afraid that their master would use the marriage to expand his power? However, who cared? They followed their master everywhere to recover lost land and deal with enemies. Who had the time to play tricks with the emperor? The emperor's worries were too unfounded. The marriage with the Chu family. There were many people in the fierce wind cavalry that didn't accept this marriage. They were all sullen. Every time the emperor appointed a marriage, they would either be missing an arm or a leg, or their family would fall. There wasn't a single family that could be accepted. However, they found out later that this Chu Qingyan wasn't as weak as they thought. In other words, she had surpassed their imaginations. She was naturally intelligent and had a lively mind. She had saved their master time and time again. Not only was she talented in martial arts, business, and war, she also treated their master very well. She was able to pull their master out of the abyss of self-imprisonment. What was there to be picky about with this kind of mistress? However, they had already officially recognized her existence and were willing to follow her as their second master. They were willing to dedicate their lives and future to her. Why would they want to steal their little princess now? The fierce wind cavalry had always been fierce, so how could they tolerate this? Master, let's kill our way into the imperial palace. The atmosphere was tense and the blood in his body boiled. Hualing couldn't control the wild energy in his body and immediately jumped out. However, as soon as he said this, he was beaten up by his companions. Just now you were telling your master not to be impulsive, but now you're so brainless. Ethereal took back his hand and shook his head. Hualing felt wronged from being beaten up. He just wanted to see if the Sichuan Emperor's fist was harder or if it was theirs. What was wrong with that? Stop arguing. Iron is still in their hands. We can't fight recklessly. We have to rely on our wits. The calm Xiao Su released an imposing aura that made people respect him. They couldn't help but submit from the bottom of their hearts. Turin, transfer the hidden guards from the various countries and quickly gather in the capital. Yes. Hualing, transfer the fierce wind cavalry. Don't alert anyone and quickly arrive outside the capital. Yes. The first few orders were given very decisively. Until the last one could clearly feel that Xiao Su was silent for a while before coldly saying, Water Spirit, have Pigeon Feather send the order to Fu Li Mountain Range. Start the plan. Yes, that plan, although he had never participated in his good friend's plan, Lin Fengyi could rely on his own judgment to sniff out what was going on. His Majesty wanted to force Xiao Su into a desperate situation to see his strength. Perhaps this time he really could get what he wanted. However, he didn't know the consequences. Could he and the entire Sichuan bear the consequences? Although as a subject of Xixin, he should have felt worried when he saw that a catastrophe was about to come, but he felt a sense of relief as if he had finally spat out the turbid air in his chest. Chapter 1320. Right now, we're in the capital, and everyone else is thousands of miles away. We don't have enough manpower. If we make a move now, it'll be like hitting a rock with an egg. So, pass down the order to not act rashly for the time being. Xiao Su's calm voice was like a breeze that brushed past everyone's restless hearts, calming them down in an instant. It was as if they had eaten a reassuring pill. This subordinate understands. Everyone said in unison. Xiao Su nodded and his gaze fell on Water Spirit. Send someone to investigate where Ayin is in the Imperial Palace and find out what their goal is. Yes. Water Spirit responded. After thinking for a while, Xiao Su said, also, investigate what Xiao Ran has been doing recently. Thinking about it carefully, Xiao Ran hadn't shown up for a while. When he thought about how Xiao Ran and Imperial Father had plotted against him and the little fellow, other than anger, there was more disappointment in his heart. This subordinate understands. As for the matter on Mount Feng Tai, continue to investigate according to Ayin's previous arrangements. What this prince hates the most is using this prince's name to commit evil and then using this prince as a scapegoat. The disappearance of the little fellow had already made him irritable enough. Now that there was an assassination attempt on Mount Feng Tai, it was no doubt adding fuel to the fire. If he caught something that could be used against him, no matter who it was, he wouldn't be merciful. Good. During this period of time, be more vigilant and hide your tracks. Don't let anyone discover you. Everything is for the future. After Xiao Su gave his last order, he let them go and do their work. After everyone left, Xiao Su looked up and saw that his good friend was still sitting there. After muttering to himself for a while, he said, "Fengyi, take Xioli and go back. In the future, don't step into the King of England's residence." Hearing his good friend's words, Lin Fengyi wasn't surprised at all. He understood him very well and didn't want to implicate him. But Xiao Su forgot that ever since they became close friends more than 10 years ago, there was nothing that could separate them. But now wasn't the time to say this, because if he dared to say it, Xiao Su would dare to drive him out of the residence and draw a clear line between them. Lin Fengyi really wanted to beat up such a considerate friend to vent his anger. But considering his skills, Lin Fengyi gave up. He didn't answer Xiao Su's question, but asked directly, "Are you serious this time? Have I ever lied?" Xiao Su asked with a chuckle. Lin Fengyi shook his head. "I've never seen such a desperate counterattack. Are you ready to welcome all of them, even if you'll be condemned by the masses?" Xiao Su, Lin Fengyi, Fengyi. Lin Fengyi understood what he meant and walked in front of him. He reached out and patted his shoulder. "Although as an official of the imperial court, I shouldn't be so emotional, I still want to say that this day has finally come." Xiao Su looked at him, his gaze softening. "Go back." Lin Fengyi smiled and reached out his hand. "I wish you success. I'll be counting on your auspicious words." Xiao Su reached out to hold his hand. When Lin Fengyi walked out of the study, he immediately saw a little bunny standing under the roof in a daze. He walked over and reached out to touch her head. His voice was gentle as he said, "Are you frightened?" If a normal person heard what Huo Ling and the others said in the study today, they definitely wouldn't be able to take it. They were clearly going against imperial power. They were simply crazy. So when he saw the little rabbit's dazed appearance, he thought she was scared stiff. He felt a bit of regret. He shouldn't have let her in. However, he forgot that this little rabbit of his did not belong to the category of ordinary people. She pulled his hand away from her sleeve and then complained as she ran her fingers through her hair. "I already told you, the hairstyle is very important. Don't mess it up. Also, which eye of yours saw that this miss was scared stiff? Who has more guts than me?" Lin Fengyi was stunned. Then he heard her whisper excitedly, "That scene was really exciting. To be able to see such a scene in my life, I can die with no regrets." Lin Fengyi's heart was about to collapse. Then he felt her hand tug at his finger. He couldn't help but look down at her and met her curious gaze. "Miser, does His Highness really want to go against the imperial court in order to save Qingyan?" Lin Fengyi held her hand, his voice carrying a trace of desolation. After being suppressed for close to 20 years, it's time for him to release it. Even a rabbit would bite when it was anxious. A dog would jump over a wall when it was anxious, let alone a sleeping lion. Once it was angered, who knew if this world could withstand its roar? In the past, it was the officials who forced the people to rebel, but now it was the father who forced the son to rebel. It really was laughable. "All right, then let's go back to Jiangnan." Xiao suddenly spoke. Lin Fengyi frowned slightly. Although his good friend also wanted him to go back to Jiangnan to seek refuge. When these words came out of the little rabbit's mouth, it was very confusing. Abandoning a friend wasn't her style. At this moment, her voice traveled into his ears again. "My family's businesses are spread all over Jiangnan, and I'm worthy of the title of the richest person in Jiangnan. In addition, I've earned a lot of money from working with Qingyan this year. Perhaps I can't be considered the richest person in Sichuan, but I can at least squeeze into the top 3. I have to go back as soon as possible and sort out the assets under my name. If His Highness really wants to fight with the imperial court, he'll definitely need a lot of manpower and resources. I don't have a manpower, but in terms of money, I can help with everything I have. I'll provide him with all the food he needs, money to buy weapons, and other necessities." Xiao counted with her fingers. "If it's still not enough, I can take out all the savings left behind by my ancestors. My father seems to have saved up a sum of money for my dowry. Although it's not as much as my ancestors' savings, it's still quite a lot." Before Xiao could finish her words, she was pulled into a strong embrace. Lin Fengyi hugged her tightly, the emotions in his eyes fluctuating. It was enough to see how strong his emotions were at this moment. His voice trembled slightly. "Why are you doing this?" A muffled sound came from his embrace, with a matter-of-fact tone. "Because Qing Yin is my friend, and your Highness is your friend. You said before, when you were your loneliest, it was your Highness and young master, Yi, who pulled you out. Now that your Highness is in trouble, we'll help if we can. Moreover, Qing Yin is the woman I admire the most in my life, my best friend. How can I sit by and do nothing?" Lin Fengyi hugged her tightly, but his tone was teasing. "But you're not only taking out your family's assets, you're also losing your dowry. Doesn't it hurt?" "It hurts. How can it not hurt?" She puffed out her cheeks. "But think about it. With your Highness' bravery and fighting skills, with Qing Yin's intelligence and wisdom, do you think they'll lose? Maybe in the end, I'll make a comeback and they'll bring me even more wealth. I've never made a losing deal." Hearing the little rabbit's sneaky smile, he couldn't help but stroke her head tenderly. The little rabbit had risked everything today to help Xiao Su and the others, but she didn't really do what she said at the end. Although she was a merchant, and a merchant was greedy, she knew how to avoid risks. And this time, it was more like a gamble of life and death. There was no chance of winning. The little rabbit just didn't want to admit it. She just wanted to help them. "Okay, let's go back to Jiangnan. And, wait, didn't I tell you not to rub my head?" Chapter 1321. Your Majesty, I feel like I've seen these assassins before. Li Wei Yuan's words made the Sichuan emperor raise his eyebrows and look at him. "Oh, tell me about it." Li Wei Yuan nodded. "Your Majesty has always asked me to pay close attention to the fierce cavalry's movements and analyze their organization, moves, fighting methods, and find out their weaknesses. After so many years, I've learned a lot about them. When I observed them fighting today, I found that the assassins' moves were similar to the fierce cavalry's. But that's all. If I met an outsider, I wouldn't be able to tell them apart. But they can't fool me." Hearing this, the Sichuan emperor frowned. "You mean to say that the purpose of impersonating the fierce cavalry to assassinate Prince Yi was to frame the King of England?" Li Wei Yuan nodded. "I can't rule out this possibility." The Sichuan emperor bent his fingers slightly and tapped them on the table. His eyes were deep. Just when Li Wei Yuan thought that His Majesty wouldn't say anything more, His Majesty spoke. "Don't make this public. I have my own plans." Although this matter didn't seem to have anything to do with Xiao Su, it was different on the surface. If he didn't listen, His Majesty would use this matter to force him to submit. The Sichuan emperor twitched his lips. God was on his side. "Yes, you've just returned to the capital, and I should let you rest for a few days. But now is the time to use people. I'll let you investigate this matter and find out who's behind it." The Sichuan emperor looked at the general in front of him and instructed him earnestly. Li Wei Yuan lowered his head in fear and trepidation and replied, "It's my honor to be valued by your Majesty. I'm willing to serve your Majesty, even if it means sacrificing my life." The Sichuan emperor stroked his beard with satisfaction. "I'm very happy to hear what you said. Then I'll have to trouble you for this period of time. As you wish." The dark clouds dispersed and the rainstorm stopped. A day of heavy rain, but it felt like 3 long autumns. Xiao Su stood under the eaves with his hands clasped behind his back. All he could see were the lanterns hanging in the distance. The dim yellow light was like fireflies as far as the eye could see, making the whole world seem lively. If the little fellow was here, she would be so happy, because she had a pair of eyes that were good at finding beauty. A jade pendant appeared on his slender fingers. He rubbed the jade pendant with deep affection, as if he was looking through the pendant to look at someone. His fingers slowly closed as he held the jade pendant tightly in his palm. The cold sensation caused his mind to waver slightly. Then he fixed his gaze on the jade pendant, cold as jade. "Ian, I'll definitely bring you back." Outside, the birds were chirping. Chu Qingyan woke up amidst the commotion. When the white light entered her eyes, she was stunned for a moment. She did not know where she was because the decorations in front of her were very unfamiliar. The Great Qin Manor could not have such decorations. However, When she saw the 4 palace maids standing in the room, she finally remembered where she was. Palace, how did I fall asleep last night? She sat up and lazily leaned against the wall of the bed. However, her entire body was on guard. Her eyes seemed to casually sweep over these people. She's probably too tired. Her ladyship originally wanted to summon Miss, but unfortunately, Miss fell asleep on the table. Her ladyship is kind and benevolent. After she found out, she told us not to disturb Mrs. Rest. One of the palace maids bowed slightly and replied respectfully. Chu Qingyan rubbed her forehead and casually said, "So it was like that. Many thanks for Nyang Nyang's understanding." At an angle where no one could see, Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes and carefully identified the smell in the air. She found that there was no longer the complex fragrance she smelled last night. She frowned slightly. It seemed that entering the palace this time didn't bode well for her. Otherwise, the other side wouldn't have tried to keep her in the palace for the night. But she didn't understand. Why did they try so hard to keep her in the palace? Perhaps she had to wait until she saw Consort Yu to know the answer. Then may I ask when you will bring me to see Consort Yu? She stood up and asked with a smile. It's still early. Nyang Nyang should be having breakfast with His Majesty right now. Miss should eat first. As the palace maid spoke, she took out the food from the food box and placed it on the table. People had no choice but to lower their heads under the eaves. Chu Qingyan understood this principle, so she couldn't rush it. Thus, she sat down. Since yesterday afternoon, she hadn't eaten a drop of water. Speaking of which, she was really starving. She had to fill her stomach first before she had the strength to fight. However, by the time she saw Consort Yu, it was already after breakfast and lunch. Chu Qingyan looked at the noblewoman who sat on the chaise lounge like a princess and didn't care about her at all. She couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. Since this person looked down on her, why did she call her to the palace? May I ask why Nyang Nyang is looking for Qingyan? She had been summoned for no reason and had been set up to stay overnight in the palace. Her patience had been worn out. She didn't plan on beating around the bush with Consort Yu and got straight to the point. Consort Yu was drinking tea at this time. When she heard this, she took a sip even more leisurely. Then, she put the lid back on and reached out her hand. A palace maid took the teacup and handed her a handkerchief. Consort Yu used the handkerchief to wipe her mouth. Only then did she look at Chu Qingyan. Miss Chu should have seen Ranner some time ago. Consort Yu's casual mention made Chu Qingyan's pupil's contract. Could it be that Consort Yu knew about her and Xiao Ran? I did. Since she asked this, she naturally knew about their meeting. There was nothing for her to hide. Then does Miss Chu know that Ranner was seriously ill at the time? Consort Yu continued. If one listened carefully, they would be able to hear the annoyance in her voice. Chu Qingyan was stunned. He was sick? Thinking back, his complexion was indeed abnormal. It was just that she had been shocked by his boldness and hadn't paid much attention to it. Consort Yu scoffed, her eyes filled with resentment. At the time, he ran out of the palace to see you even though his fever hadn't subsided. It was the first time this consort had seen him so stubborn. But Miss Chu, what did you repay him with? You made his illness even worse. Does Nyang Nyang mean to say that fourth prince hasn't recovered from his illness? No matter what, Xiao Ran was her friend. She couldn't help but ask anxiously. Consort Yu harumphed. This consort really doesn't see what's so special about you that he can't forget you. The imperial physician said that he has a mental illness that's hard to cure with medicine. If that wasn't the case, this consort wouldn't have gone through so much trouble to get you into the palace. Nyang Nyang, what are you planning to do? Chu Qingyan immediately looked at her vigilantly when she sensed that there was something wrong with Consort Yu's words. Consort Yu smiled ambiguously as she said, Don't worry, this consort is only inviting you to visit Ranner. Aren't you two friends? Isn't it normal to be concerned about a friend who's sick? Chu Qingyan frowned slightly. She did not know why, but Imperial Concubine Moon's smile made her feel uneasy. Chapter 1322. Of course, the fourth prince is Qingyan's friend, so of course Qingyan has to visit him. If the palace servant who came to the estate to inform me, Qingyan wouldn't have come empty-handed. Chu Qingyin couldn't help but pat her head when she said this. All right, Qingyin remembered that there is a high-quality ginseng in the storeroom. How about letting Qingyin go back and bring it to His Highness in the palace? Chu Qingyin wanted to use this opportunity to leave. However, Consort Yu saw through her trick and mocked. Miss Chu, there's no need to be so polite. No matter how good the things in your estate are, they can't compare to the imperial palace. So it's fine that you're here, but there's no need to bring the things. Chu Qingyin lowered her head in agreement, but she felt even more uneasy. Consort, you didn't plan on letting her go back? It seemed like she had to wait until she saw Xiao Ran before making any plans. At this time, Consort Yu reminded her. Ranner's health hasn't been good recently, so you have to watch your words. If you don't go along with his wishes and make his illness worse, even Xiao Su won't be able to protect you. Her tone was really disgusting, but she couldn't say anything at this time and could only bite the bullet and agree. After Consort Yu made her presence known, she arrogantly brought her to see Xiao Ran. Although Chu Qingyin couldn't see through Consort Yu's plan, she was still shocked when she saw Xiao Ran lying on the bed. A few days ago, he was still a handsome youth with rosy lips and white teeth. Now, he was so thin that she almost couldn't recognize him. Xiao Ran, how did you get so sick? She frowned and asked with concern. Xiao Ran already knew that Chu Qingyin was coming today. From last night until now, he had been so excited that he couldn't sleep. Now that he saw her, his fingers trembled. Even though he had mentally prepared himself, he still couldn't believe the person in front of him. She had black hair and red clothes, beautiful and eye-catching, as if he was in a dream. Ran, Imperial Mother has already brought her here. You must remember to take your medicine properly later. Consort, you couldn't bear seeing her son's infatuated appearance. Out of sight, out of mind, she turned and left after giving her instructions. After Consort Yu left, Chu Qingyin felt a little more at ease. She sat on a chair brought by someone beside her, was filled with guilt toward Xiao Ran. From Consort Yu's words, didn't you say it was a simple cold? Why hasn't he recovered after so long? Xiao Ran looked at her in a daze. It was as if the person in front of him would disappear in the blink of an eye. Qingyin, I thought you wouldn't see me again. His voice was hoarse and low. Originally, Chu Qingyin had been rather pleased that Jiang Yi had brought her into the palace for no apparent reason because of him. Now, seeing him in such a state, how could she still be angry? She sighed softly and said, I heard that you're not taking your medicine properly and are not cooperating with treatment. Aren't you wasting your life like this? Xiao Ran smiled bitterly. I don't have the energy to do anything recently. I feel like life has lost its meaning. I've never felt like this before. Even though I never had a goal, I feel more and more lost in this period of time. What do you want me to say to you? She shook her head and angrily said, right now, the most important thing is to take care of your body. When you're sick, your immune system will weaken and your mental state will be affected. You deserve to be so passive. Hearing this familiar concern, Xiao Ran's eyes lit up. I was wrong for being so passive before. But I heard from Imperial Mother that you'll be staying in the palace for a period of time. If you're with me, I'll definitely get better quickly. Stay for a period of time? Chu Qingyin frowned. Why didn't I know about this? Xiao Ran didn't notice that there was something wrong with her expression. He smiled and said, that's right. Imperial Mother said that she was afraid that I'd be lonely, so she invited you into the palace to be her companion. Since you've entered the palace, doesn't that mean you've agreed? Chu Qingyin's lips couldn't help but twitch when she saw Xiao Ran smiling happily by himself. Which eye of yours saw that I agreed? But now that he said it, she had been tricked into entering the palace by Consort Yu. But if it was just for her to accompany Xiao Ran, there was no need to go through so much trouble and be so secretive about it. Could it be that there was some ulterior motive behind all this? At this time, a palace maid came in with medicine. Miss Chu, this is His Highness medicine. Chu Qingyin took it and tested the temperature before passing it to him. Drink it. Xiao Ran revealed an awkward expression. After I fell ill, my limbs became weak. Usually, the palace maids have to feed me medicine. Hearing this, Chu Qingyin reflexively turned around to call for a palace maid. But when she saw that there was no one in the room, black lines slid down her forehead. Qingyin, just leave the medicine here. It's fine. Xiao Ran's eyes were downcast. His expression was very lonely, but he forced a smile as he spoke to her. She really wanted a facepalm. What was going on? She took the spoon and scooped a spoonful of medicine to his mouth. Drink it. Qingyin, you're the best. Xiao Ran's eyes instantly widened. His eyes were filled with light, and his tone was very cheerful. Chu Qingyin resisted the urge to pour the entire bowl of medicine down his throat. She pursed her lips at him, then said, "Don't say anything. Drink it quickly." "Oh." Xiao Ren obediently opened his mouth to drink the medicine. Just as he was about to say something to ease the atmosphere, another spoon was already at his mouth. Thus, the entire process was very quiet and swift. Chu Qingyin put the empty bowl to the side. She glanced at Xiao Ran, whose face was wrinkled into a bitter gourd. Only then did she calm down and think about her situation. The big ice cube should already know about her entering the palace, but there was still no movement. The big ice cube probably didn't know what these people were up to, so he was waiting to see what would happen. Today, she would first discuss returning to the Fu with Consort Yu. If it didn't work out, she would think of a way to send a message to the big ice cube. While Chu Qingyin was deep in thought, Xiao Ran noticed that she wasn't speaking. He couldn't help but look a little disappointed. "Qingyin, do you still hate me? Don't you want to accompany me in the palace?" His pitiful appearance made him look like an abandoned kitten or puppy. If it was any other time, she definitely wouldn't be so nice to him. He was already so old, yet he still acted like a little girl. But when she saw his pale face, she couldn't help but sigh in her heart. It was better not to bicker with a sick person. It's nothing. Rest well, and don't let your thoughts run wild. All right, then talk to me. I haven't seen you in a long time. Xiaoran opened his sleepy eyes and stared at her. Chu Qingyin felt a headache coming on. Don't force yourself. If you want to sleep, then go to sleep. Oh. Xiaoran grinned at her and then slowly closed his eyes. She knew that sick people like to sleep. But what she didn't know was that Xiao Ran had been in a deep sleep during this time and was now very energetic. So when she got up to find Consort Yu, she didn't notice that the person behind her slowly opened his eyes. The tiredness from before disappeared from his eyes. Chapter 1323. Xiao Ran watched as that beautiful figure slowly disappeared behind the muslin curtain. The naive and sickly look on his face disappeared without a trace. Although his face was still pale, at least he didn't look as weak as before. He admitted that he had pretended to be so pitiful to gain her sympathy, and he had succeeded in gaining her sympathy. However, that wasn't all he wanted. He could tell that although Qingyin cared about him, if his lady mother hadn't brought her here, she probably wouldn't have taken the initiative to visit him in the palace. He still remembered what she had said. If she couldn't let go of him, they couldn't even be friends. Once she became serious, she was very ruthless. He didn't understand her personality in the past, but now he was experiencing it vividly. Although Imperial Father's words had given him some confidence, he didn't know what Imperial Father would do. Now that his lady mother had brought Qingyin over, it gave him a sliver of hope. However, as long as Imperial Father and Imperial Mother were on his side, he didn't need to be afraid of anything. "Qingyin, this time, I won't let go of you no matter what." Xiao Ran looked at the empty bowl on the table, and his lips curled slightly. Then he closed his eyes again. Consort Yu was in the outer hall. While drinking tea, she saw Chu Qingyin slowly walk out and asked, "His Highness is asleep?" "Yes, he fell asleep after taking the medicine." Chu Qingyin followed her words and replied. Consort Yu nodded and continued to drink tea before saying, "In the past few days, I've had to persuade him for a long time just to get him to take a bowl of medicine. I didn't expect him to be so cooperative the moment you came. It's really rare. Perhaps His Highness the Fourth Prince knows that Your Highness is worried and can't bear to disappoint Your Highness. His Highness is a very filial child." Chu Qingyin casually replied. Consort Yu smiled. How could she not know her own child? If he was really filial, he wouldn't be lying on the bed, half dead. Chu Qingyin glanced at the tea the palace servant brought her, but didn't touch it. Instead, she stood up again and said respectfully to consort you with a smile, "Your Highness, since His Highness is already asleep, then Xingyan won't disturb him any longer. I'll visit His Highness the next time I enter the palace." Xingyan will take her leave. Before she could even turn around, Consort Yu slammed the teacup in her hand onto the table. The hall fell into a dead silence. Chu Qingyan feigned ignorance and looked at her. Imperial concubine Moon looked at her enchanting face, and her heart was filled with disgust. Had been bewitched by her appearance and didn't know that this person didn't even have him in her heart. If Chu Qingyan knew what Consort Yu thought of her, she would probably raise her head and laugh. What a person's heart thinks is what their eyes see. Objectively speaking, Chu Qingyan wasn't very seductive. Only Higashio Motetsu's devilish aura could be considered seductive. In fact, she could be said to be extremely beautiful. Even though she often wore crimson clothes, it made her look even more otherworldly. Chu Qingyan, do you think that you'll be able to leave the palace after entering? Consort Yu said coldly. Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes. Was she finally going to reveal her foxtail? Qingyan doesn't understand what your Highness Consort Yu is saying. She looked at her calmly as she slowly replied. Consort Yu sneered. No, this consort knows that you understand. I'll be honest with you. If Ranner doesn't recover from his illness, don't even think about taking half a step out of the palace. Consort Yu's words carried a blatant threat. Chu Qingyan couldn't suppress the anger in her heart and said bluntly, "You want to put me under house arrest? Impudent. You actually dare to speak to your Highness like that. Someone slap her." Nanny Jiang no longer had her previous gentle and respectful demeanor. She had turned into Nanny Rong and wanted to punish her. Chu Qingyan took a step forward and coldly glared at Nanny Jiang. "You dare?" Nanny Jiang was stunned by her imposing manner. When she finally reacted, she flew into a rage out of humiliation and wanted to personally slap her, but Consort Yu stopped her. "Nanny Jiang, you can withdraw." Nanny Jiang reluctantly withdrew, still glaring fiercely at Ji Yunshu. Chu Qingyan harumphed and withdrew her gaze from Nanny Jiang to look coldly at Consort Yu. At this moment, Consort Yu was a bit stunned when she saw the coldness in Ji Yunshu's eyes. Ji Yunshu had been obedient and let others trample on her before, but now she gave off a completely different vibe with just a change in her gaze. But so what if Ji Yunshu got angry? Wasn't everything still within Ji Yunshu's control? Consort Yu wiped the corner of her mouth with a handkerchief and ignored Chu Qingyan's anger. She straightened her clothes and unhurriedly said, "Don't make it sound so unpleasant. It's better to use the word house arrest to replace it. For example, as a guest." When she heard this, Chu Qingyan was so angry that she wanted to laugh. This person was quite shameless and could even lie through her teeth. "Your Highness Consort Yu, Qingyan is the King of England's fiancée that His Majesty personally bestowed upon her. I'm afraid that it wouldn't be good for her to stay in the palace for long periods of time. Also, it wouldn't be good for His Highness the Fourth Prince. After all, in half a month, His Highness the Fourth Prince will be engaged to Miss Jing," Chu Qingyan said with a slight smile. Her smile didn't reach her eyes as she stared fixedly at Consort Yu. "Chu Qingyan, this consort knows that you're very smart. Otherwise, the King of England wouldn't have risked the crime of deceiving the monarch to send you onto the battlefield. You played a huge role in defeating Nansong. However, the harem isn't a place where you can come and go as you please. That's why this consort advises you to obediently stay in the palace and not cause trouble." When Consort Yu said these words with a smile that wasn't a smile, Chu Qingyan immediately stiffened. Although she had only mentioned this matter lightly, the thread in her words was very strong. She actually knew that she had disguised herself as a man and gone onto the battlefield. This matter had clearly been covered up, but unexpectedly, it was still brought up. From the looks of it, Consort Yu was fearlessly keeping her in the palace. If Big Ice Cube caused a ruckus in the palace, she had a way to make sure that they were in the wrong. However, she was more worried about whether Sichuan Emperor knew about this matter. Sichuan Emperor was already wary of Big Ice Cube. If they found out, they would use this as a pretext to make a fuss and trap Big Ice Cube in the wrong. Seeing the changes in Chu Qingyin's expression, Consort Yu smiled in understanding. She then said to the palace maid beside her, "Take Miss Chu away to rest. When His Highness the Fourth Prince wakes up, bring her over." Yes. The palace maid walked in front of Chu Qingyin and stretched out her hand. "Miss Chu, this way, please." Chu Qingyin looked at Consort Yu's smug expression and couldn't vent the anger in her heart. She could only stifle her anger and turn to leave. When the hall returned to silence, Jiang Mama asked in confusion, "Nyang Nyang, why didn't you let this old servant teach Chu Qingyin a lesson and dampen her spirit? Let's see if she dares to talk back to you next time. You were too impulsive. If Ranner saw the wound on her face, how are you going to explain it?" Consort Yu looked at her disapprovingly. Then she laughed softly and said, "There are thousands and thousands of ways to teach someone a lesson. Why choose this kind of low-level method?" Jiang Mama had been blaming herself, but when she heard the last part, her eyes lit up and she nodded knowingly. This old servant understands. Chapter 13:24. When night fell, the fish belly turned up once again. After the turmoil of war, Prince Yi's mansion slowly quieted down. However, the atmosphere was very gloomy. The day before yesterday, their lord was sent back. He was covered in blood, and his breath was so weak that it was almost undetectable. If they hadn't tried their best to save him, their lord would have stepped into the gates of hell by now. "Steward, how is it? Has Lord woken up?" Lin Jiangdong appeared in the courtyard early in the morning. When he saw the steward come out, he immediately went up to him and asked worriedly. The steward shook his head and sighed. "Although we saved Lord's life, the doctor said that whether he can wake up depends on his luck." Lin Jiangdong recalled the scene when Lord came back that day. He frowned and said to the steward, "No matter what condition Lord is in, we must try our best to save him. Tell the doctor to wait in the courtyard. Without permission, no one is allowed to leave." The steward could only nod at his words. After he finished speaking, Lin Jiangdong strode into the room. When he saw the person lying on the bed, he frowned and stood by the bed, sighing deeply. If Lord hadn't cared about Pang Zhijing that day, he wouldn't be in such a critical situation now. Now, not only is Pang Zhijing's life uncertain, but you also suffered such a serious internal injury. If you don't wake up soon, our future plans will be in vain. How can you be so foolish? At this moment, a guard knocked on the door and said that he had something to report. Lin Jiangdong immediately went out. When the room returned to silence, the unconscious person's fingers trembled slightly and his eyelashes fluttered. Then he slowly opened his eyes. Life uncertain? His lips trembled as he whispered to himself. Xiao instantly woke up. His eyes widened. When he saw that he was in his own room, he couldn't help but prop himself up. When the servant who delivered the medicine saw this scene, he immediately cried out in surprise, "Steward, Mr. Lin, Lord is awake. Lord is awake." Xiao Ho turned a deaf ear to her cries of joy. He just wanted to sit up and get off the bed. When Lin Jiangdong and the butler saw that their lord had woken up, they couldn't help but smile. However, when they saw his actions, the two of them walked up to him. "Lord, what are you doing? You just woken up, so don't move around. Otherwise, your wound will split open again." The housekeeper immediately supported him and let him sit against the bed wall. He didn't dare to touch him for fear of touching his wound. When Lord was sent back, there wasn't a single part of his body that was in good condition, which made his heart ache. "That's right, Lord. Although our plan wasn't completed, His Majesty knows who tried to assassinate you. At the very least, it aroused his suspicion. Our goal can be considered to have been achieved. You can rest at ease and recuperate. Everything can wait until your wound is completely healed before making any plans," Lin Jiangdong advised with a smile. "Now that you've woken up, as long as you take good care of your body, there's always hope." This time, his injury was too serious. Even sitting up took half of his strength. Xiao Ho panted lightly before looking at Lin Jiangdong, who was standing in front of him. "Where's Zhijing?" Lin Jiangdong had prepared a lot of things to say and report on the situation of the past few days. He didn't expect that Lord's first words after waking up would be about the good-for-nothing princess. Although he looked down on the princess, he still answered truthfully. After the princess fell off the cliff, I sent some people to search for her, but they haven't found anything yet. In fact, he didn't think that she was at the bottom of the cliff at all. He didn't send many people, so it was fate that they found her. Moreover, the cliff was so high that even if they found her, it would only be a corpse. Although Xiao Ho was injured, he wasn't stupid. He could tell that Lin Jiangdong was being perfunctory from his words. He was furious. "How long have I been asleep?" "A day and a night," the butler replied. "The doctor originally said that Lord would need at least 3 days to wake up. I didn't expect him to wake up so soon. Indeed, the Lord is blessed." "A day and a night?" Xiao Ho's eyes widened when he heard this. His fingers trembled as he held onto the edge of the bed. How could he sleep for so long? Jing was still waiting for him to find her. Thinking of this, Xiao Ho stood up from the bed despite being stopped. He clutched his chest and walked towards the door. Although his body hurt, it couldn't compare to the pain in his heart. Every step was like stepping on the tip of his heart. It was so painful that he couldn't breathe. "Men, gather all our men." "Yes." Lin Jiangdong immediately walked out. When he heard Xiao Ho's order, he immediately walked in front of him and asked anxiously, "Lord, you haven't recovered yet. What are you doing?" "She fell off the cliff because of this prince. This prince wants to find her and bring her back." After Xiao Ho coughed, he pursed his lips and looked at Lin Jiangdong. "If you don't do your best to find her, then don't interfere in this matter." Lin Jiangdong was stunned. This was the first time he had been reprimanded so harshly by Lord. Or rather, this was the first time he had seen Lord lose control of his emotions after following him for so long. He found it unbelievable, but at the same time, he felt that Lord was too impulsive. "Lord, you're not feeling well right now and need a rest. Leave this matter to me. This time, I won't do it half-heartedly and search seriously." Lin Jiangdong considered his health and couldn't help but negotiate with him nicely. Xiao Ho chuckled and said in an unquestionable tone, "This prince won't be at ease if I leave it to you. If you stop this prince again, don't blame this prince for being rude." Lin Jiangdong saw that Lord was determined to go. The suspicion in his heart from before was now more and more confirmed. Lord was tempted. With the great cause at hand and revenge at hand, how could Lord have a problem at this time? At this moment, a guard jogged over. "Lord, Crown Prince Pang said that if you wake up, you are to find him. He has something to discuss with you." Upon hearing this, Lin Jiangdong immediately said, "That's right, Lord. The cooperation between you and Crown Prince Pang has yet to come to a conclusion. Let's recuperate first before we discuss the next step of the plan with him." Revenge had always been Lord's goal. Now, only this matter could move Lord's heart. However, after Xiao Ho heard the guard's words, his entire person's expression became somewhat strange. Lin Jiangdong was pondering when he heard Lord's cold voice. "Go back and tell Pang Huang that his people hurt my people. This prince will not let him off easily." The moment Xiao Ho said this, Lin Jiangdong was immediately stunned. When he came back to his senses, he hurriedly pleaded with Lord, "Lord, this is Prince of Nansong, our future partner. How can you destroy our cooperation like this?" "Cooperation? This prince doesn't have such a stupid partner. You can't even differentiate between friend and foe." Xiao Ho snorted coldly. "Lord, although Crown Prince Pang's people did something wrong, we are still cooperating with him. We can't be too ruthless. Furthermore, the cliff is so high that the princess might have already," Lin Jiangdong advised him, afraid that he would destroy their cooperation. However, no one could understand Xiao Ho's feelings at this moment, especially when he heard Lin Jiangdong's unfinished sentence. His chest tightened, and he suddenly couldn't breathe. He wiped away the tears in his eyes and said word by word, "This prince doesn't care about anything else. If she's alive, this prince wants to see her. If she's dead, this prince wants to see her corpse. It's that simple." Chapter 13:25. Xiao Ho's words made Lin Jiangdong feel uneasy. He widened his eyes and looked at the pale Xiao Ho in front of him. He really didn't want to admit this fact. "Lord, you still have feelings for the princess." "Feelings?" Xiao was slightly startled. He didn't know, but at this time, he really wanted to see her. At this time, everyone had gathered. Xiao restrained his expression and ordered, "Go to Fontime Mountain." "Lord," Lin Jiangdong called out loudly. Xiao turned to look at him, his eyes as cold as water. "Sir, what else do you want to say?" "Lord, at this time, you can't be tied down by love. Think about the plans we've made over the past 10 years, Lord." He knew that once Lord made up his mind, he wouldn't change it. But seeing the Lord so stubborn, he wanted to persuade him not to be impulsive. Xiao's eyes were deep. Because of his words, his mind flashed with the images of all the revenge he had done over the years. Finally, a white light appeared and he regained his clarity. "Sir, I haven't forgotten about the revenge, but to me, the most important thing now is Zhijing." After saying this, he led his people out of the courtyard without looking back. Lin Jiangdong's face instantly turned pale. Looking at the figures in the distance, he couldn't help but shake his head. His Highness had given up just because he was one step away from the door. What a pity! In the King of England's residence, Master, His Majesty sent people to seal off the capital. Everyone has to go through strict checks. Our people spent a lot of effort, and only 2 people went out. They were afraid of being discovered, so the others didn't dare to act rashly. Water Spirit looked troubled. She sent out dozens of pigeons yesterday, but she didn't expect the Sichuan Emperor to act so quickly. The entire capital seemed to be under surveillance. There were patrolling soldiers everywhere. Every street and alley was guarded. Anyone who looked suspicious would be stopped and questioned strictly. It was very unfavorable for their actions. "I think His Majesty is guarding against us." Water Spirit, you came in through the secret passage, so you definitely didn't notice that there are many more people outside the residence. Those people are dressed as commoners and hang around outside all day, but they are actually watching our every move. I originally wanted to go out, but now I don't dare to go out casually. Huoling kicked the pillar angrily. He had never felt so sullen. If it wasn't for the little princess being in the palace and making them have scruples, he wouldn't even put these people in his eyes. Turin looked at the 2 of them and then looked sternly at the person behind the table. "Master, even if His Majesty was guarding against you in the past, he never did it so obviously. It seems that this time, he plans to shed all pretense of cordiality with you." When Huoling and Water Spirit were complaining, Xiao Su's expression had been cold the entire time. When he heard Turin's words, he changed his posture and leaned against the back of the chair. His tone was cold, because he knows that no matter how much Ben Wang backed down in the past, he can't swallow the hatred of stealing his wife. Ethereal stood to the side. She rarely spoke, but now she couldn't help but say, "Master, His Majesty is going too far. Is he planning to trap us in the capital? What does he want to do?" Rather than saying that he is watching Ben Wang, it's better to say that he is afraid. But he is more excited. He has always wanted to force Ben Wang to act. He wants to know how many trump cards Ben Wang has, so he will definitely make a move next. It's just that Ben Wang can't guess at the moment. When Xiao Su said this, his gaze swept to Water Spirit. "Have you found Ian's whereabouts?" Water Spirit looked ashamed. "Forgive this subordinate's incompetence. Even now, we still haven't found out where the young princess is in the Imperial Palace. The original guards in the Imperial Palace have all been replaced. It's a bitter situation. The spies we buried in the Imperial Palace can't even get close to the inner courtyard of the Imperial Palace. Many of the eunuchs and palace maids have been cleared out. Those who serve His Majesty and consort you are all his trusted aides. The security is very tight. Normally, even a mosquito can't enter the palace where they go. We originally wanted to arrange for people to investigate at night, but we found that even the roofs of the palace are guarded. This time, the security of the Imperial Palace is the tightest it has been in many years. They are just hiding a young princess. Is there a need to guard the Imperial Palace like an iron bucket?" Huoling almost cursed, but because his master was here, he could only enjoy it in his heart. "This isn't your fault. Imperial Father has always been cautious. If he wanted to hide someone, it wouldn't be so easy for others to find her." Xiao Su waved his hand, but his eyes darkened even more. At this time, Turin spoke up. Master, His Majesty seems to be very afraid that you will find the young princess by doing this. Also, I feel that there's more to this than meets the eye. Xiao Su snorted coldly. He's afraid that this prince will turn against him after finding Ian. Also, the plan this time is probably something he came up with on the spur of the moment. It's not very thorough. Right now, he really needs time to perfect the plan. So, hiding Ian is not only to anger this prince and make this prince panic, he also wants to stall for time. When he said this, Xiao Su's lips curled into a sneer. It was because Imperial Father knew that Ian was his weak spot, so he used her without any scruples to do things that he had always wanted to do, but never had the chance to do. That's right, once a person had a weak spot, it was easy to break through. However, Imperial Father did not understand another principle. That was, when a person had someone they wanted to protect, they would become stronger when they met the strong and stronger when they met the strong. Pigeon Feather has already gone to the Fuli mountain range to send a letter. In less than a month, they will receive the news. Before they arrive, other than stalling for time, we must also prepare to escape. Xiao Su continued, Water Spirit, the most important thing for you right now is to find a way to find Ian's location. Once you rescue Ian, we will immediately leave the capital. Water Spirit nodded solemnly. This subordinate will do everything in my power to find the young princess consort. Turin's eyes lit up at this time. He stepped forward and asked, Master, now that our people are being closely monitored, it is somewhat inconvenient for us to move. Why don't we find some outside help? This subordinate believes that Her Majesty the Empress and the Liang family will be very willing to help. When these words were said, everyone looked at their master. It was indeed a good idea. Xiao Su shook his head when he heard this. I understand Imperial Mother and Grandfather's thoughts very well. Once they participate, the situation will be difficult to clean up. At that time, we will walk a path that Ian and I don't want to walk. Perhaps we will really bear an infamy for all eternity. His idea was very simple. Rescue Ian and then take her far away. Even if he had to fight against the imperial court, he would not hesitate. However, he did not want to become a sacrifice for imperial power, a chess piece for Imperial Mother and the Liang family, and then spend years or even decades fighting for that position. Everyone nodded in deep agreement. At this time, someone came in to report, Lord, the second prince requests an audience. Xiao Su raised his brows. Why did second brother come at this time? Invite him to the drawing room. Chapter 13:26. Xiao Yao came suddenly, and his appearance was also very sudden. Although Xiao Su had a lot on his mind right now, seeing his second brother covered in grass and a few chicken feathers on his head, he couldn't help laughing. What happened to you? Hu Ling on the side couldn't help laughing as he said, Second Prince, did you sleep in a chicken coop? Xiao Yao was already depressed. Seeing this master and servant laugh at him, his face filled with grievance. He looked at Fire Spirit Tiger. Is this prince someone you can talk about as you please? Go, go, go. No respect for your elders. Hu Ling gave a laugh and retreated behind his master. Xiao Yao gave a snort and slowly picked up his teacup, elegantly drinking from it. If it wasn't for his current appearance, he would have looked quite elegant. Eldest brother, this door of yours really isn't easy to enter. In order to not be discovered, I had to climb over the wall. Chi. I never thought that there would be a day when I, the elegant and refined lord, would fall to the point of climbing over a wall. He had been sighing to himself, but the scene suddenly changed. He angrily said, Eldest brother, when did your king's palace start raising poultry? I remember that there was a small garden behind that wall. How did it become a chicken coop? It caused me to fall quite heavily, and I was chased far away by several hens. Living this long, I have never encountered such a sullen situation. Today, you will kill those hens for me. I want to eat chicken and drink chicken soup to vent the anger in my heart. Xiao Yao normally had an unrestrained appearance and was very easy to talk to, but as long as one didn't touch his bottom line, it was fine. However, his temperament was very high, and it was like he had been chased by chickens with nowhere to run. This was simply a great shame for him, so he wanted to seek justice from Xiao Su like a little child. Actually, he was normally like how he described himself. When Xiao Su heard his words, he could not help smiling. Behind him, Hualing was laughing uncontrollably. Then, under Xiao Yao's man-eating gaze, he stopped laughing and explained, "Those domestic animals are raised by my family's Master Chu, who is also my family's little princess father. Actually, you are considered lucky. Master Chu took Xiao Huang and Xiao He for a walk. Otherwise, if you met those two dogs, it wouldn't be just like this." The corner of Xiao Yao's mouth twitched. He found it hard to believe that his eldest brother would allow someone to raise poultry in his mansion. It was unbelievable. Hualing said that he was raised by your father-in-law. Is that true? Do you have any objections? Xiao Su glared at him coldly. Xiao Yao was so scared that he immediately sat up straight. He swallowed his saliva and waved his hand. No problem. If you can't answer, I'll take a detour. Xiao Su sat down on the main seat and looked at him inquisitively. Tell me, what are you doing here? He did not believe that his second brother would climb over the wall at this time, just to drink a cup of tea. If that was the case, he would not be wasting time here with him. Xiao Yao put away his frivolous appearance and looked seriously at the person sitting on the seat. I've been strolling around the capital these past 2 days and found that the atmosphere was not right. There were patrolling soldiers everywhere. It was even more strict than when the Southern Song envoy entered the capital. I wanted to find you to ask for some information, but I didn't think that I would hear the news that the Southern Song princess had fallen off a cliff and that third brother was seriously injured and unconscious. I thought that I could come here to relieve myself, but I didn't think that your place would be even more dangerous. Are those people outside the Imperial Palace guards? Xiao Su raised an eyebrow. You have good eyes. Xiao Yao chuckled. Even if they changed their clothes, I would still recognize them. After so many years, Imperial Father has sent many people to catch me. I've almost become familiar with them. After saying this, he saw that he was unmoved. Xiao Yao rubbed his nose and entered the main topic. Did you and Imperial Father have a falling out? Xiao Su frowned. He's the one who wants to steal my person. As expected, Xiao Yao slapped his thigh and said in a tone of realization, I was wondering why Imperial Father invited Miss Chu into the palace for no reason. So it was to provoke you. Just now in the prince's mansion, he had overheard the servant's conversation. He did not think that Imperial Father would use such a despicable method to force his eldest brother to take action. So, you came here to talk to me about these things? Xiao Su frowned. Hearing the impatience in eldest Imperial brother's voice, Xiao Yao immediately stopped talking. He opened his fan and said unhurriedly, Of course not. I know that you must be worried about Miss Chu's whereabouts right now, and I also know that your people can't find her, so I specially came to make it convenient for you. Xiao Su's eyes brightened. Speak. Your people can't go in and find her, but that doesn't mean that I can't find her. Seeing his puzzled expression, Xiao Yao smiled mysteriously. Eldest brother, have you forgotten that my imperial mother is still in the palace? Although she has not participated in the struggle for favor and power for many years, if she wants to find someone, she can still do it. Xiao Yao's words made Xiao Su's lips curve. I really did forget. Then I'll have to trouble you. Hearing this, Xiao Yao laughed and closed his folding fan, standing up. Don't be so polite at this time. We brothers don't distinguish between you and me. Xiao Su nodded gratefully, but said in a serious tone, After we find Ian, don't have any more contact between us. I don't want to implicate you. Xiao Yao laughed softly. Imperial brother, what time is it now? Don't always think about others. Also, your second brother is not an idiot. I know how to protect myself. You go about your business. I know what I'm doing. Wait for my good news. He patted Xiao Su's shoulder, then turned with a smile. But when he left the hall, the smile on his face slowly disappeared. Imperial brother, I haven't done anything for you in all these years. This time, I will definitely protect you well. With Consort Wan's help, we will definitely be able to find the young princess consort as soon as possible. Hualing was a bit excited. Consort Wan was Xiao Yao's birth mother. Looking in the direction Xiao Yao left, Xiao Su nodded with a faint smile. In the Imperial Palace, Chu Qingyin sat in a chair with her brows deeply furrowed. Consort Yu's words made her feel uneasy. Although Sichuan Emperor and consort, you didn't say it on the surface. They were secretly plotting against the big ice cube. This matter of hers would definitely be used by consort you to deal with the big ice cube. She had to find a way to contact the big ice cube and tell him about her situation. However, for the past 2 days, other than staying in her own room, she was brought to see Xiao Ran. No matter where she went, there were 4 palace maids watching her. Needless to say, there were also imperial guards watching over her. It could be said that it was difficult for her to move an inch. But the more it was like this, the clearer her mind was and the calmer her heart was. Because she knew that panicking would only make her panic. She knew how to contact the Xiao cavalry, but she had tried several times here without success. It seemed like she couldn't contact them at all. Suddenly, a light flashed in her mind, making her think of someone. Chapter 13:27. Chu Qingyan took out the bone whistle that she had hidden on her body. It was given to her by Dong Ting 5 years ago. Big Ice Cube's men might not be able to enter, but Dong Ting's men might not be able to enter. Thus, she decided to test out this bone whistle once she understood the changes in the guard shifts. At this time, hearing the sound, she immediately put away the bone whistle. "Miss Chu, His Highness is looking for you." The palace maid pushed open the door and bowed to her. She was already used to Xiao Ran, looking for her several times a day. She stood up and pulled back her sleeves. "Let's go." She found that the place she lived was very close to Xiao Ran's palace. She only needed to walk a short distance to get there. She thought that it was to make it easier for Xiao Ran to summon her. Also, the guards along the way were very strict. If she wanted to escape from this place, it would be too difficult. So she gave up on the idea of climbing the wall in the middle of the night. Entering the hall, Chu Qingyan put away her emotions. A faint smile appeared on her lips. She looked up and unexpectedly met Xiao Ran's expectant eyes. These past few days, she had seen this expression many times, but she was still a bit stunned at that moment. She was very puzzled. She had never given him the wrong impression before. She was only a 10-year-old girl back then, not to mention the 5 years they had been separated. Even if they met again after many years, they had not seen each other that many times. Why did he not let her go? But this question, she could not ask Xiao Ran face to face. First, she was afraid that something would happen to his body again. Then she might enter the palace vertically and leave lying down. Second, she did not want any more accidents to happen and implicate the big ice cube. The current situation was very clear that the big ice cube was also restrained. Otherwise, there would have been no news in the past 2 days. "Qingyan, what are you thinking about? Come here." Xiao Ran saw her standing there in a daze and could not help but wave at her in confusion. Her train of thought interrupted. Chu Qingyan gathered her thoughts. A faint smile appeared on her face again. She walked toward Xiao Ran. "The imperial physician said that you have recovered well these past 2 days. You might be able to get out of bed and walk tomorrow." "Yes, it's all thanks to your care. Otherwise, I might have to lie in bed for a while." Xiao Ran grinned, revealing his neat white teeth. He looked very simple and honest, as if he had no shrewdness in his heart. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips when she saw his smile. She hoped that he wasn't involved in what consort you was doing. "By the way, Qingyan, try this dessert. I specially asked the imperial kitchen to prepare it for you. It's made according to your preferences. You'll definitely like it." As he spoke, Xiao Ran pushed a few plates of exquisite pastries on the small table in front of her. Then, he looked up at her, like a child who was eager to be rewarded, expectantly and carefully. Facing this kind of gaze, even if she wasn't hungry, she couldn't refuse. She reached out to try a piece and nodded with a smile. "It's really not bad." Receiving praise, Xiao Ran was as happy as a child. He wanted to pull her hand, but she cleverly avoided him. He was slightly surprised, but he still cheerfully said, "It's good that you like it. In the future, tell me what you want to eat, and I'll have the imperial kitchen make it for you." Chu Qingyan said with a faint smile, "Don't just take care of me. The most important thing right now is your body. You have to drink all the medicine and tonic soup that I made for you. Only then can your body recover faster. I'll listen to everything you say." Xiao Ran nodded without any hesitation. Hearing this, she was silent for a while before probing. Xiao Ran, I've already been in the palace for 2 or 3 days. I don't know how the Wong Fu is doing. Can you tell your mother to let me leave the palace? When she said this, Xiao Ran still had a faint smile on his lips, but the smile in his eyes disappeared. His voice was as usual with a bit of grievance as he said, I'm seriously ill right now. How could you bear to leave the palace? Also, Imperial Brother is so powerful. Even without you, he can still manage the Wong Fu well, so it's fine if you stay a bit longer. But I'm still worried. She shook her head as she said, You've been by Imperial Brother's side for so many years. You've only been by my side for a few days, and you're already impatient? Xiao Ran's voice suddenly became low. He turned his back to her and only left her with a pitiful back. Chu Qingyan finally noticed a change in his mood and couldn't help but sigh in her heart. This Xiao Ran was like a child who couldn't get candy and was throwing a tantrum. In order to not make his illness worse, she could only compromise. Okay. I take back what I said just now. Your medicine is here. Take it first. When she said this, Xiao Ran seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. When he saw the palace maid bring the medicine, he looked at her again. Chu Qingyan chuckled. You have hands and feet. If you do it yourself, you'll have ample food and clothing. Hearing her words that he hadn't heard in a long time, Xiao Ran seemed to have returned to the time when he first met her. The haze in his heart disappeared, and he obediently took the bowl of medicine and drank it. This action stunned the palace maids on the side. It was the first time they saw His Highness take medicine so cooperatively. They couldn't help but give Chu Qingyan a hint of respect. Qingyan, when my body gets better, how about I play a song for you? And one asked with great interest, the other answered carelessly. However, Xiao Ran's mind was on the song that he was going to play and didn't notice Chu Qingyan's absent-mindedness. And Chu Qingyan, who felt the subtle change in Xiao Ran's state of mind, felt that she couldn't stay here any longer and had to leave as soon as possible. So the two had their own thoughts. In the imperial study, Sichuan Emperor and the right Prime Minister were discussing. This time, Zhen wants to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Does right Prime Minister have any good suggestions? Sichuan Emperor said straightforwardly. The right Prime Minister was surprised by Xixian Emperor's straightforwardness. Thinking of what Xixian Emperor had done during this period of time, as well as his sister's private communication, he suppressed his surprise. For their faction, this was simply a great opportunity to eradicate the left Prime Minister's faction. Previously, he turned a blind eye and didn't participate because he was afraid that His Majesty didn't like his officials to overstep the bounds. Now that His Majesty had taken the initiative to speak, he could act boldly and decisively. This old official feels that if we want to cut off the King of England's escape route, we must control the Liang family and their disciples in the court. Otherwise, if we don't eliminate the roots, they will grow again when the spring wind blows. The right Prime Minister's obscure words made Sichuan Emperor's face brighten. You are worthy of being Zhen's capable minister. Sichuan Emperor stroked his chin and hesitated. The left Prime Minister's faction has a deep foundation and won't be so easily shaken. Beloved Minister, what good ideas do you have? The right Prime Minister smiled. Since he could sit in this position, he had to have some ability. This old official has a lot of evidence of the crimes of the right Prime Minister's faction over the years. I haven't had time to present it to your Majesty. Now it can be used. Sichuan Emperor smiled when he heard this. That's good. The right Prime Minister smiled slyly. If this evidence was in normal times, it wouldn't be able to shake the Liang family at all. But now that His Majesty wanted to punish them, it didn't matter what the severity was. Any piece of evidence could consign the Liang family to eternal damnation. After waiting for so many years, this day finally came. Chapter 1328. Time passed quickly, and 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. At the bottom of the cliff, a blue figure had been standing there for a long time. He coughed from time to time, and his face was completely pale. However, his eyes were fixed on his surroundings, and he didn't relax at all. Lord, You've been here for 2 days and 2 nights. Go back and rest. Leave this place to your subordinates." Xiao's personal guard couldn't stand it anymore and stepped forward to persuade him. "Don't say anymore. I know what I'm doing." Xiao raised his hand and stopped his subordinate from continuing. The guard had no choice but to retreat. At this time, the people he sent out returned. Xiao looked at them, his fingers slightly curled, and his voice carried a hint of nervousness. "Did you find her?" Everyone shook their heads. One of them stepped forward and said, "Lord, we've searched the entire bottom of the cliff for the past 2 days, but we still can't find the princess." Xiao's face stiffened. Then he pursed his lips and ordered coldly, "Continue to search. If you can't find her, expand the search area. I want to see her even if you have to dig 3 feet into the ground." Everyone looked at each other, but they didn't dare to question Lord's orders. They immediately left. In front of him was a vast expanse. The grass was as thick as a finger and as tall as a person. There was wet soil and sharp stones everywhere. Xiao couldn't help but clench his hands. "It's been so many days. Zijing, where are you? I don't dare to leave here. They said there are wild beasts here. I'm afraid they'll appear and hurt you. I'm also afraid that if I leave and find you, the first person you see won't be me. However, I'm even more afraid that I won't be able to find you. Lord, we've searched the east. There's no one. What about the west? No one. What about the south? Still no one." Xiao was silent. His entire body seemed to be shrouded in a huge shadow, making it impossible for others to see his current expression. However, one thing was certain. The aura emitted from his body was cold, lonely, and sorrowful. It was so strong. The guard standing in front of him suddenly mustered up his courage and said, "Lord, the wild beasts here appear and disappear unpredictably. Maybe the princess, she's already gone. He's no longer around?" These words were like a curse, constantly circling around his ears. At that time, she was still in his arms, laughing and bickering. Now, in the blink of an eye, someone was telling him that she might not be here anymore. He felt that someone was constantly digging in his heart, slowly hollowing it out. "Nonsense, continue. Lord, the brothers who went to the north to search have returned. And what are they carrying?" Someone cried out in surprise, attracting everyone's attention. Xiao was stunned. She was already in front of him. A few guards carried a person and stopped in front of him. Then, they gently put her down. The person was covered with a white cloth, so the person's appearance could not be seen clearly. However, the corner of her pink robe made everyone silent. "Lord, the princess has been found," the leader said, and then silently retreated. Xiao stood rooted to the ground in a daze. He looked at the stretcher covered with white cloth. For a moment, his mind went blank. It was as though he couldn't think. "What did you say?" He moved his lips and muttered. That person couldn't bear it and repeated, "It's the princess. The princess has been found." Xiao shook his head and said in disbelief, "This prince hasn't verified it yet. It can't be her." As he said, his trembling hand slowly reached for the white cloth. When he touched the corner of the cloth, he subconsciously retracted his hand. He didn't want to admit it, but he was very frightened. Finally, he closed his eyes and pulled the white cloth away. Suddenly, a person whose face could no longer be seen clearly appeared in front of him. He fell from a high place and smashed into a huge rock in the north. His appearance was scratched by the sharp edges, and his limbs were broken. The time of death was 3 days ago, which coincided with the princess's fall. Moreover, his figure and clothes were similar. The subordinate reported word by word, causing Xiao's heart to sink to the bottom of the valley bit by bit. Although everyone was constantly verifying that this person was him, he still couldn't believe it. He bent down and stretched out his hand to touch her ankle, only to see the 7 exquisite locks obediently wrapped around that slender ankle. His pupils shrank, and he staggered back a few steps. Pang Huang had put the 7 exquisite locks on her in order to restrain her. He had also given the key and compass to him to keep an eye on her. He remembered that in order to get the key, she had used all kinds of methods and even drugged him. Unfortunately, she had taken the wrong medicine and made a mistake. He had flirted with her, but in the end, the two of them had parted on bad terms. His eyes swept over the transparent jade bracelet on her wrist. He felt his chest tighten, as if his heart had been hollowed out. However, his eyes were still staring at the bracelet. 3 days ago, he had personally put it on her. In order to cure his poison, she had offered the most precious thing of a girl. He knew that she loved him deeply and didn't want to disappoint her. Thus, he had given the only thing his mother had left him to her, acknowledging that she was his only wife in this life. However, the jade bracelet was still there, but she had already passed away. Pooh! He spat out a mouthful of blood. Lord, Lord! In the hazy white light, he seemed to see a figure slowly walking toward him. Xiao, didn't I tell you not to make yourself so miserable? Why won't you listen? Come back, I'll listen. He reached out, trying to touch the figure, but he was trapped in darkness. How many times in a trance seems to see you flowing in a sea of people? Vaguely, you have appeared. In the blink of an eye, you have disappeared. You are like brilliant fireworks. How can I not miss you? In a remote courtyard in the capital. Young palace master, didn't you ask this subordinate to pay attention to the King of England's movements? This subordinate found that in the past 2 days, the King of England's people have been moving around frequently. Although many people have been fooled, they can't fool this subordinate. Xuanqi Zimo reported proudly. Higashio Motetsu supported his chin with one hand and leaned lazily against the couch. Did you find out the reason? Xuanqi Zimo chuckled. Not yet, but this subordinate has already arranged for people to investigate. There will be news soon. Higashio Motetsu nodded. Speaking of which, this young master hasn't seen the girl for a few days. She said that she would be leaving the city in a few days. Why hasn't there been any movement? Just as he was feeling puzzled, a sound suddenly came from the air. His ears twitched, and when he heard it clearly, he immediately got up from the couch and walked to the window to listen carefully. Young palace master you. As soon as Xuanqi Zimo spoke, his master raised a hand to stop him. He immediately shut his mouth. His master's expression was very serious. Based on his experience, he should hide far away. Not good. Something happened to the girl. After the sound stopped, Higashio Motetsu said in a low voice. How did you know? Xuanqi Zimo finally asked curiously. She was playing the bone whistle this young master gave her. She hasn't played it in so many years. This time, it's unusual, and the direction of the sound. Higashio Motetsu looked into the distance, his eyes deep. It came from the palace. Chapter 1329. This young master has to enter the palace. Higashio Motetsu narrowed his eyes. Perhaps Miss Chu wanted to blow the whistle on a whim. Besides, it's not unusual for her to enter the palace. Isn't she the King of England's fiancée? It's normal for her to enter the palace. Xuanqi Zimo was a little selfish. The young palace lord had yet to recover from his injuries, and he didn't want him to take the risk of entering the palace. Higashio Motetsu shook his head. That's impossible. I know her. She knows how important the bone whistle is to me. Besides, considering the recent movements in the King of England's estate, it might have something to do with her. No matter what, I have to enter the palace. Seeing that he had made up his mind, Xuanqi Zimo had no choice but to compromise. All right, then this subordinate will arrange for you to enter the palace. The sooner the better, Higashio Motetsu said coldly. Xuanqi Zimo looked at the sickly expression on his face and opened his mouth. In the end, he sighed and left without saying anything. In the palace, Chu Qingyan played with the bone whistle in her hand. She thought about the gift she'd received from him in the eastern courtyard and frowned. She didn't know if he'd be able to find her tonight. Just then, there was a soft sound. If her hearing wasn't good enough, she wouldn't have heard it at all. She opened her eyes and immediately turned to look at the window. Under the fluttering curtains, she saw a purple figure standing under the moonlight. He looked even more handsome than before. In the past few days, she'd only seen unfamiliar faces. Seeing someone familiar, her eyes couldn't help but redden. We've finally met, and you're already crying. People who don't know better might think that I bullied you. If word gets out, how can I, the Moon Palace's young palace lord, live? How can I survive in the Jianghu in the future? There was a teasing tone in his voice, but when he walked up to her, she could clearly see the worry in his eyes. When he saw that she was unharmed, he sighed heavily. She placed her last hope on the whistle, hoping to get lucky. She hadn't expected him to really come. I didn't want to either, but I couldn't control myself. I didn't expect you to really come. Chu Qingyan rubbed her sore eyes. In the past few days in the Imperial Palace, she had been on tenterhooks and on guard everywhere. Only when she saw a friend she was familiar with could she let down her guard. At this moment, she felt both agitated and wronged. Didn't I say that whenever you need me, just blow the whistle and I'll appear? Higashio Motetsu looked at her and couldn't help but reach out and rub her head tenderly. She nodded gratefully. Because of the special occasion, she quickly collected her emotions. Higashio Motetsu scanned his surroundings. After a moment of contemplation, he met her eyes. You summoned me because Xiao Su's men couldn't enter. How did you know that I could? Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows and smiled. The people guarding me are Consort Yu's men. The Moon Palace works for her. As the young palace lord, who would dare to stop you? So I thought that perhaps no one would be able to enter, but you wouldn't make things difficult for your own people. Am I right? Smart. Higashio Motetsu snapped his fingers, then looked confused. Then why did you believe that I would come to see you? Since I'm a member of the Moon Palace, you should be more cautious. Aren't you afraid that I played a part in trapping you in the Imperial Palace? She wanted to roll her eyes at this question. You might not believe me, but I relied entirely on my intuition, because I believed that you wouldn't hurt me. Chu Qingyan's confident tone made Higashio Motetsu burst with joy. He pressed his fan against his forehead and lowered his head to smile. His beauty instantly filled the hall. Even Chu Qingyan, who was used to seeing beauties, couldn't help but sigh in amazement. As expected, when a beauty smiled, it was enough to cause the fall of a city. However, she didn't dare to say this in front of him. You're right. I, Higashio Motetsu, would never hurt my own people. After laughing, he became serious. I haven't been involved in the affairs of the Moon Palace, so I didn't know that you were under house arrest here. I also didn't know what my father and consort you were plotting. However, one thing I can be sure of is that not only is the security in the Imperial Palace tight, but it's also the same in the city. The atmosphere is very tense, as if a fight could break out at any moment. I guess. His gaze fell on Chu Qingyan, his expression grave. It should be related to you and Xiao Su. To be more precise, it should be targeting Xiao Su. Consort you wants Xiao Ran to take the position of Crown Prince, so she has to get rid of Xiao Su. This is without a doubt. Otherwise, she won't be able to convince those ministers in the imperial court who insist on the seniority. How despicable! Chu Qingyan angrily slammed the table. She had been suppressing her anger for a long time, and now she had nowhere to vent it. Her entire body was on fire. Suddenly, she remembered something. That's right. Consort, you knows that I went to the battlefield. If this news spreads, it will be very disadvantageous for His Highness. Higashio Motetsu's expression darkened when he heard this. I know what they want to do. What? Hurry up and say it. She asked urgently. He looked at her, his eyes dark. After hesitating for a moment, he said, You should have noticed Xiao Ran's feelings for you. Consort, you put you under house arrest here for Xiao Ran and also to threaten Xiao Su. They have something on you, and with your safety, Xiao Su can't act rashly. Otherwise, with his personality, he would have broken into the Imperial Palace long ago. You're under their control this time. In the end, Higashio Motetsu made this definition. Chu Qingyan frowned and pursed her lips. Her eyes were filled with deep confusion. But we've already planned to leave the capital. Why are they still chasing after us? Could it be that they want to force us into a desperate situation? Aren't they afraid that a cornered dog will jump over a wall and a cornered rabbit will bite? I'm afraid that's their goal. Higashio Motetsu replied mildly. What? She cried out in shock. Higashio Motetsu said seriously, It's like two gamblers. Neither of them knows the number of the other's dice. If you don't want to gamble, you can tell the other that your number is very small. However, the other party doesn't believe you and insists that you open the lid. Now, this is their worry. They're worried that you're trying to trick them, so they'd rather force Xiao Su to make a move and then eliminate the source of trouble. Damn it! She gritted her teeth angrily. It's been so many years. If His Highness wanted that position, he would have done so long ago. Why wait until now? Moreover, the most troublesome thing is that the one controlling everything is the Emperor. Therefore, Xiao Su's chances of winning this time are not very high. You must be prepared for a life and death struggle. He was familiar with the strength of the Moon Palace sect. After so many years, not only did they have an unshakable position in the Jianghu, but they had also slowly infiltrated the court. Therefore, if the Moon Palace sect and the Fu family joined forces, and with the help of the Sichuan Emperor, it would be difficult for Xiao Su to escape unscathed. He sighed softly and then looked at her with bright eyes. Then what do you want me to do for you? I can take you out of the palace. Chapter 1330. Higashio Motetsu's words stunned Chu Qingyan, but when she regained her senses, she immediately shook her head. No, if you do this, they won't let you off. What does it matter? At most, I'll be reprimanded by my father. No matter what, I'm still the next successor of the Moon Palace. They won't dare to do anything to me. Higashio Motetsu said carelessly, as if he didn't care at all. Chu Qingyan firmly shook her head. It's not that easy to take someone away from here. Moreover, there are experts from the palace all around. I believe that you won't have any problems with one against a few, but with so many people, you won't be able to fight them. Moreover, she closed her eyes, and a trace of anger flashed across her face. She gritted her teeth and said, My internal energy has already been sealed by them. Right now, I'm just an ordinary person. Not only can I not help you, I might even drag you down. That's why I can't leave. After falling asleep that night, when she woke up the next day, she noticed that something was wrong with her body. It seemed that the problem came from the fragrance that she smelled that night. Hearing this, he immediately grabbed her wrist to check her pulse. After a moment, he let out a long breath and narrowed his eyes. As expected, it's already been sealed. It seems that their plan this time is imperative. That's what I'm worried about. But right now, I can't leave and His Highness's people can't come in. This makes me even more worried. Chu Qingyan withdrew her hand and strolled around the room with a heavy heart. Then is there anything that I can help you with? Looking at the beautiful figure under the light, he felt worried for her and blurted out. Chu Qingyan turned around and was silent for a moment before saying, This time, I called you here because I need your help with something. His Highness must be very worried about me being here. So, I want you to help me send a message. Tell him that I'm fine, and that consort you already knows that I'm on the battlefield. Tell him to be more careful. Is that all? He raised his eyebrows. Yes, that's all. She nodded and smiled. I believe that he will keep me safe, so there's no need to say anything else. The unconditional trust in Chu Qingyan's eyes made his heart tremble slightly. In this kind of situation where both sides couldn't protect themselves, she could still firmly believe in Xiao Su. He didn't know if she was too stupid or too confident, but he couldn't refute it. For so many years, he had watched her and Xiao Su walk step by step. The two of them had never disappointed others. No matter how dangerous the situation was, the two of them were always able to overcome it. He suddenly felt envious and jealous at the same time. How he wished that the person by her side was him. How he wished that he could also gain her deep trust. All right, at this moment, the crisp sound of a flute came from outside the room. Both of them were stunned. To be able to play a flute in the heavily guarded palace, that person's identity was definitely not ordinary. Dongting, you leave first. Be careful and don't let anyone find you. Chu Qingyan immediately warned. You be careful too. If there's anything, blow the bone whistle to contact me. He also knew that it wasn't good to stay here for long. He didn't want to cause trouble and implicate the little girl. He nodded without any objection and then quickly left the way he came. After sending Dongting away, Chu Qingyan took a deep breath and then walked out of the room. Such a clear sound, there was only one possibility. The flute player was in her courtyard. Sure enough, when she stood at the door, she saw a figure standing under a tree with his back to her. A delicate and light blue robe fluttered in the night wind. He was tall and slender, holding a jade flute in his hand. He was elegant like an immortal. Under the hazy moonlight, it was really pleasing to the eye. But when that person turned around, the admiration in her eyes suddenly froze. Xiao. At this time, he didn't put down the flute and continue to play. But he slowly approached her. His gaze was warm like water, but his eyes were burning like fire. It was hard for her to imagine that such extreme emotions could be vividly expressed in a pair of eyes. When he arrived in front of her, Xiao's lips hooked up. His fingers fluttered, nimbly playing the flute. A pleasant and moving melody flowed out. The moonlight, the beautiful man, and the sound of the zither formed a beautiful and bewitching picture. If it was someone else, she would be stunned. But when she heard what song he was playing, her expression became calmer, and there was no smile in her eyes. Xiao's thoughts were all on her. At this time, he could clearly feel the change in her mood. The notes he played became softer and softer. Finally, he put down the jade flute and looked at her in panic. Qingyan, did I not play it well? Qingyan calmly looked at him. After a while, she slowly said, "It was good, but you shouldn't have played it for me." Xiao didn't even have time to be happy after receiving confirmation. The last sentence was like a bucket of cold water being poured over his head. He bit his lip and said, "Why? You will be engaged in half a month's time. You should play this song for Miss Jing," she said to him patiently. He was still a child and should be guided more. When he heard, he immediately argued, "This song was meant to be played for my beloved. I don't have any feelings for her." Qingyan, don't misunderstand. I didn't misunderstand. Qingyan's expression became serious, and her voice also became more solemn. It's because of the meaning behind this song that you can't play it for others. I can't either. You're still young and ignorant about matters of the heart. It's very possible that you'll mistake friendship for love. I'm young. Qingyan, you're younger than me by 3 years. Xiao impatiently stepped forward. I truly like you. Why do you always misunderstand me? Xiao, I'm your future imperial sister-in-law. Do you think it's appropriate for you to be like this? Qingyan's voice hardened. Those who knew her well knew that she was close to exploding, so she was still worried about this. Xiao's expression softened. If you're worried about Imperial Brother, don't worry. I'll compensate him. After all, you two were forced to be together because of that Imperial edict. As long as Imperial Father says it, your marriage won't count. In the future, we can be together openly. Qingyan was also angry at this time. Xiao, where did we give you the wrong impression that we were forced to be together? Your Imperial Brother and I love each other. How many times do I have to say this before you listen? Could it be that you only choose to listen to what others say to you? If that's the case, then I have nothing to say to you. Xiao was shocked and his heart ached. He unsteadily took a step back, his eyes filled with pain and disbelief. You and Imperial Brother are so different in age. How can you have feelings for each other? Also, he's so dull and you're so lively. You shouldn't be able to talk about the same thing. Qingyan looked at Xiao's shocked and sorrowful face. Her heart couldn't bear it, but she had to cut through this layer of window paper at this time. Whether it was for her or for him, it was beneficial. Chapter 13:31. Xiao, do you believe that there is fate in this world? Qingyan slowly walked under the tree, intentionally or unintentionally widening the distance between the two, and then turned to look at him. Xiao looked at her with a hurt and blank expression, waiting for her answer. Your eldest brother and I were originally two unrelated people. If it wasn't for that imperial edict, there would be no possibility of us meeting in this life. However, your imperial grandfather and imperial father made the decision, and because of the marriage, we were bound together. This is the fate that brought us together. Speaking of which, when I first learned about the marriage, I was against it. I didn't want to be a victim of a political marriage. I was forced to enter the King of England's household. However, after interacting with him, I found that he wasn't like the rumors outside. He was gentle and attentive, and was a rare partner to accompany for a lifetime. I'm willing to hold hands with him and grow old together. Qingyan spoke gently, with the tenderness and sweetness of March in Jiangnan. No matter how one looked at it, she seemed like a woman who was deeply in love. However, this scene was very painful in Xiao Ran's eyes. Those words were like thousands of arrows, fiercely stabbing into his heart. How could it be? You! Xiao Ran shook his head, and the stormy waves in his eyes finally turned into determination. No, Qing Yin, you must be lying to me. Seeing that he was still deceiving himself, Chu Qing Yin was very disappointed. She fixed her eyes and spoke to him seriously for the last time. Xiao Ran, what do I have to do to make you believe that I'm telling the truth? In a relationship, height, age, and family background are not distance. The distance is whether or not you love each other. Moreover, your eldest brother is only in his early 20s, very young. What makes you think that we don't have common topics to talk about? Speaking to her, her tone was a bit agitated. Speaking of his reticence, isn't it because of you? Every one of you will only push him out when you encounter a problem. No matter if it is a fire pit or a mountain of knives, you don't even blink. In this world, there is no more ruthless executioner than you. Watching him go through fire and water in front of you, do you have the nerve to enjoy this golden age behind his back? I didn't, Xiao Ran immediately argued, as if someone had stepped on his tail. No. Then what are you doing now? You should know the reason why your imperial mother brought me into the palace, right? Xiao Ran, why do you think that as long as you want it, your imperial brother will give it to you? Have you asked your imperial brother's opinion? Don't do to others what you don't want done to you. You are really too disappointing. Chu Qing Yin shook her head, her disappointment evident in her words. Qing Yin being so disappointed in him made Xiao Ran panic. He reached out and grabbed her hand, anxiously explaining, Qing Yin, don't be disappointed in me. I really didn't mean to hurt you. Imperial Mother is doing this for my own good. She doesn't want me to be immersed in the pain of lovesickness. Moreover, I really want to see you. Chu Qing Yin calmly looked at him. Xiao Ran, let go of me. Let go of me. Give up on me. Xiao Ran met her calm and beautiful eyes. Hearing her say, let go, 3 times, his heart was filled with shame and anger. His grip on her wrist tightened as he said word by word, Qing Yin, I will never let go of you. Chu Qing Yin frowned and forcefully flung his hand away. Her voice was indifferent as she said, Your Highness Fourth Prince, please conduct yourself with dignity. Seeing the impatience in her eyes, the alienation in her words, and the way she addressed him in the end, Xiao Ran was angry and resentful. Qing Yin, could it be that I can't compare to eldest brother? Looking at the person in front of her who was doing his best, although she shouldn't continue speaking out of selfishness, in order to let him see reality clearly, Chu Qing Yin closed her eyes. When she opened them again, her voice was solemn. You can't compare to him in any way. This was the truth. Whether it was beauty in the eye of the beholder or an objective evaluation, her big ice block was unparalleled in the world. Xiao Ran's eyes widened when he heard this. He looked at her in disbelief. So in her eyes, he wasn't worth a single cent. He had always been a favored son of heaven. Imperial father and imperial mother said that he was smart and witty. The ministers were also full of praise for him. He worked hard to learn knowledge, diligently practiced martial arts, and was proficient in etiquette, music, archery, and imperial calligraphy. But in the end, she ignored him because of eldest brother. Unwillingness, humiliation, sadness, disappointment, and sadness filled his entire heart. Qing Yin, what you're saying is unfair. I'm also working very hard. He looked at her with melancholy, and his eyes were filled with unwillingness. Chu Qing Yin sighed lightly and looked at him. Xiao Ran, you're a flower that grew in a greenhouse. He's a tree that's been exposed to the wind and sun. What you're saying is indeed unfair. Xiao Ran's eyes widened. These words were even more piercing than the words just now. He was stunned in place. No matter if it was in the palace or in the court, everyone said that he had more talent and ability than eldest brother. But no one had ever told him so directly that he couldn't compare to eldest brother. Could he really not compare? She felt that she had already said it. Whether or not he could understand was up to fate. Seeing that the sky was so dark, she didn't want to be entangled with him anymore. She turned to leave. Sensing her intentions, Xiao Ran blocked her path. Under her unhappy gaze, he lowered his voice as much as possible and gently said, "Qingyan, perhaps I really can't compare to Imperial Brother, but I still have a long life. I can learn. I can work hard to improve myself and surpass Eldest Brother. Can you give me a chance? Why do you have to do this?" Chu Qingyan was first stunned by his persistence. Then she pursed her lips and frowned. She had wasted an entire night talking to him so much, but she didn't think that he wouldn't listen to a single word. How could he be so stubborn? She really wanted to pry open his head and see what was inside. Xiao Ran looked at her. Her black hair and red clothes contrasted strongly, but it made her look even more beautiful. That pair of lively eyes blinked on her palm-sized face. Every time they blinked, it was like they brushed past the softest part of his heart. Her delicate lips were a light red. The moonlight shone through the gaps and fell on her body, making her delicate face look even more vivid. She was so beautiful that he was mesmerized. Xiao Ran absent-mindedly walked forward and reached out to grab her wrist, wanting to pull her into his embrace. "Qingyan, give me a chance. I will treat you well for the rest of my life." Xiao Ran let go. She had lost all her internal energy and was unable to move his strength. Chu Qingyan looked at him in alarm. She didn't think that he would suddenly come close. "Qingyan, I really like you." "Pa!" Before Xiao Ran could finish his affectionate words, a slap landed on his face. After the cold touch, there was a burning pain. He took a step back and looked at the person in front of him with red eyes and disbelief. "Qingyan, you hit me?" Chapter 1332. Chu Qingyan hurriedly took a few steps back and then raised her head. The anger in her eyes was obvious. "Xiao Ran, do you know what you're doing?" She clenched her fists tightly. If it wasn't for the fact that her internal energy was being suppressed, then it wouldn't have just been a simple slap. She even had the thought of violently beating him up. However, at this moment, Xiao Ran didn't notice her anger. He was still immersed in the fact that the woman he loved had slapped him. Moreover, she had used all her strength without any leeway. Actually, for someone like Chu Qingyan who had lost her internal energy, this slap wasn't heavy at all. However, in Xiao Ran's eyes, it wasn't just a slap. She had ignored his feelings and stepped on his sincerity. "Qingyan, I should be the one asking you this. Do you know my feelings or not?" Xiao Ran put down the hand that was caressing his face. The gentleness in his eyes had completely disappeared. The night formed a dark and heavy background behind him and then slowly seeped into his eyes. It was deep and dark, as if it contained the undercurrent of a storm. Chu Qingyan was shocked by his sudden change. However, at this moment, the ambiguity was the biggest injustice to him. Thus, she calmed her face and looked at him with pity. However, her face was calm and her tone was firm. "I know, but I'm sorry. I can't accept it." The person that he yearned to protect and couldn't bear to hurt was standing in front of him with her red lips and white teeth. She could clearly smile at him, but those red lips spat out the words that he couldn't accept the most. He felt that the sincerity that he had given had all become a joke. In fact, he knew that although many people praised him on the surface, they often compared him to his eldest brother. His eldest brother was brave and good at fighting while he accomplished nothing. His eldest brother was supported by the people while he was worthless. However, he didn't care because he admired his eldest brother very much. Moreover, all of this was what he deserved. However, this was the only time he had seriously fought for it in the past 10 years. He believed that he didn't have to sacrifice as much as his eldest brother. How did he get such a result? That pair of gentle and kind eyes narrowed, and a malicious glint appeared in them. "Qingyan, I won't let go of you, and one day, I'll make you take back what you said. Stay by my side willingly." The change in Xiao Ran's eyes was so gloomy that it sent chills down one's spine. Chu Qingyan was stunned. Then, she said in a deep voice, "What do you want to do? You should rein in your horse before it's too late. Pull back from the brink." Xiao Ran lowered his eyes. His eyes were covered by the shadows cast by his eyelashes, and his true emotions couldn't be seen clearly. She could only hear a mocking smile from his thin lips. "Qingyan, there's no turning back now that I've fallen for you." After saying that, he didn't wait for the stunned Chu Qingyan to react. He took a few steps back and gave a low laugh. Then, he slowly turned around and stepped on the shattered moonlight as he slowly left. Chu Qingyan looked at his back. It was lonely and bleak, but it also made her heart uneasy. Her words tonight wouldn't have the opposite effect, right? But if she could let him clearly know her feelings, he wouldn't blindly try to separate her from the big ice cube anymore. After Chu Qingyan comforted herself, she walked to her room. Ever since her inner energy was sealed, she became very tired easily. They must have done something to her food. But Ethereal wasn't by her side, so she didn't know what was wrong with her. She had to wait until she left the palace before she could do a proper examination. At the same time, in the quiet King of England's residence, which looked gentle and harmless, enjoying the peace of the night, there were turbulent waves inside, and the atmosphere was extremely tense. "Master, the Fu family seems to want to make a move against the left prime minister. This subordinate has discovered that they are frequently mobilizing people to gather evidence. This evidence is very unfavorable to the left prime minister's faction. It also involves the Luo family's treason 21 years ago and Old Master Chu's battle 15 years ago." Water Spirit stood in front of the table and reported respectfully to the figure shrouded in darkness. There was a trace of surprise in her voice. The candlelight flickered, and the place that wasn't illuminated was dark. Xiao Su was hidden in the darkness. When he heard this, his eyebrows twitched. You know what they are planning? With the Liang family's position in the court, the evidence is not enough to topple them. But this time, this subordinate feels that it is very strange. Although they're doing things secretly, there are still movements. But the higher-ups didn't say anything. This was what she was puzzled about. It was really too strange. Xiao Su narrowed his eyes. As the two major factions in the court, the Fu family and the Liang family had not been at loggerheads for a day or two. They didn't like each other and wanted to topple each other. But for so many years, they were able to restrain each other and appear to be peaceful on the surface. This was because the person on the dragon throne didn't want to see one of them become more powerful, so he allowed them to fight within his control. But as soon as they went out of control, he would take action. This was an unchanging rule. So if the two families wanted to hurt each other, they had to do it before the invisible hand behind the scenes made its move. But at this moment, the Fu family's actions were so big, but Imperial Father didn't make a move. Then there was only one possibility. The Fu family was doing this under Imperial Father's orders. Xiao Su's gaze gradually turned cold. Hualing rubbed the back of his head and said in confusion, "Master, this subordinate doesn't understand. It is no secret that the Fu family wants to deal with the Liang family. But for them to make a move at this time, isn't it too coincidental?" "It isn't coincidental," Xiao Su said indifferently and coldly. "The Fu family dares to do this because they have support behind them. Imperial Father probably wants to cut off all my wings this time and doesn't want anyone to support me. So sealing the city is to cut off your escape route. Dealing with the Liang family is to cut off your support. His Majesty wants to force you to your death." Hualing was agitated and directly blurted out the words. When the words fell, the room was instantly silent. He swept a glance at his master and companions and immediately closed his mouth. Although Hualing's mouth was fast, he said a bloody truth. Xiao Su's jaw was clenched, his expression was cold, and his gaze was heavy. No one knew what he was thinking at this time. On the side, Turin broke the silence and said, "Master, if the Liang family falls at this time, then the court will be reshuffled. Reshuffling is exactly what His Majesty wants. When the time comes, he will support the fourth prince's henchman. When the time comes, he will be conferred the title of Crown Prince." Hualing revealed a mocking smile, his eyes full of disdain. "The current situation is very unfavorable to us. Master, what should we do? Should we help the Liang family?" Water Spirit raised her head and asked. The Liang family must have its support to reach this stage today. In the short term, even if the Fu family wants to make a move against them, it won't be that easy. Don't interfere first. When he said this, Xiao Su changed the topic and was as cold as a knife. Who is outside? Esteemed guest, isn't His Royal Highness too cold? A mocking and lazy voice sounded from outside the door. Chapter 1333. When he said this, Turin and the others were stunned. They hadn't noticed that there was someone outside the door. They were both shocked and vigilant. Hualing looked at the table, and after receiving permission, he quickly walked forward. He reached for the sword at his waist with one hand and opened the door to the study with the other. When the wooden door opened, the person outside entered their sight. A man in a bright reddish-purple robe was lazily leaning against a pillar with a golden folding fan in his hand. When he saw who it was, he stopped spinning the fan. At this time, when they saw that he was the Moon Palace's young master, Turin, Water Spirit, and the others all had serious expressions. They pulled out their weapons and coldly surrounded him. Everyone knew that the Moon Palace worked for Consort Yu. Their little princess was taken away by Consort Yu. Now that he had walked right into their trap, how could they let him go so easily? Is this how you treat your guests? Higashio Motetsu looked at the people surrounding him and directly looked at Xiao Su. His voice was filled with provocation. Hualing turned his wrist when he heard this. He wanted to attack him. At this time, an indifferent voice came from the study. Let him in. When this was said, Turin and the others looked at each other. They couldn't help but put away their swords and take a step back. Turin reached out with an indifferent expression. My master invites you in. Higashio Motetsu's brows slightly jumped. He opened his fan with a pa sound and walked into the study while waving it. Hualing, on the side, frowned. This person was fearless, as if he was just walking into his own study. He looked at Turin. Turin also frowned and was on his guard. Princing, we have at least met a few times. Coincidentally, this young master had also assisted the little girl to save your life 5 years ago. Why is it that we do not even have a cup of tea when we meet today? Higashio Motetsu walked in and ignored Xiao Ran's cold gaze. He sat down on the side and began to pick and choose. Xiao Su looked up indifferently. If young Master Daunting had handed in an invitation and openly entered through the front door, the proper etiquette would not have been lacking. Hearing this, the corner of Higashio Motetsu's mouth twitched. Did this mean that he didn't deserve to be treated courteously because he climbed over the wall? But if he didn't use this method, he probably wouldn't even be able to touch the door. Your Highness King Ying, although this young master isn't taking the usual path, I have brought you important news. Shouldn't you change your attitude? He really didn't like this kind of oppressive feeling, especially when it came from the little girl's fiancé. It made him feel like he was placed in a position where he had to look up to others, and this kind of feeling was very uncomfortable. Young Palace Master, young Master Daunting's words. Our positions are opposite. Our master is already merciful to let you sit here alive. What else do you want to scheme? Hurry up and tell me your purpose. Otherwise, don't blame us for being rude. Water Spirit sneered and walked out. Her eyes fell on him, full of hostility. Higashio Motetsu raised his eyebrows and looked at the silent Xiao Su. He knew that he had acquiesced to his subordinate's questioning. He couldn't help but curl his lips. Sure enough, like people raised like subordinates. Even their words were full of arrogance. Xiao Su allowed him to enter the room. Now that he was surrounded by his people, he wasn't afraid that he would escape. So at this time, he was calmly examining him. More accurately, he was examining his prey. He sighed softly in his heart. He originally wanted to make trouble for them, but the master didn't fight back, and he didn't want to argue with the subordinate who fought back. So he put away his frivolous attitude and calmed his gaze. He looked at Xiao Su and said slowly but clearly, Xiao Su, whether you believe it or not, this young master is here to send you a message. Xiao Su looked at him coldly, as if trying to figure out how much truth there was in his words. He was really taciturn. He didn't know how the little girl could stand his personality. Higashio Motetsu didn't want to beat around the bush with him anymore. He stopped waving the fan in his hand and said reluctantly, "It has something to do with the little girl." As soon as he said this, everyone's expression changed slightly. They all looked at their master behind the table. At this time, Xiao Su's deep voice sounded in the room. "Serve tea for young Master Daunting." "Yes." Higashio Motetsu's mouth twitched again. As expected, the little girl's face was big. The person who was disdainful of him just now was now treating him with respect. The tea was quickly served. Dense steam lingered in front of his eyes. After he took a sip of tea, he heard the cold voice again. "You've drunk the tea. Young Master Daunting, you can speak." Higashio Motetsu's mouth twitched again. So simple and direct. However, he had come here today to deliver a message, so he didn't delay any further. The little girl is now in Leisurely Palace, which is next to Xiao Rant's palace. It is heavily guarded all around, and the security here is even tighter than the city's. Huo Ling and the others looked at each other. Then they looked suspiciously at Higashio Motetsu. Besides this, what else is there? Higashio Motetsu stirred the tea leaves floating above, waiting for Xiao Su to question him. But he didn't expect this reaction. His hand paused, and he looked up in surprise at the person behind the table who was as calm as a mountain. "You don't doubt it?" He believed it so easily. "Ian said that you were a close friend. This prince believes that you won't joke about her safety." From the incident of falling into the water last time, it could be seen that Higashio Motetsu was sincerely protecting the little girl. Although he didn't like him appearing around the little girl, he had promised the little girl that he wouldn't interfere with her making friends. And after he made sure that this person wouldn't hurt her, even if they were on opposite sides, he wouldn't hurt him for the time being. Moreover, Xiao Su's eyes fell on Higashio Motetsu's chest. His eyes were like torches. "Also, with your current strength, do you think you can escape from my elite soldiers?" Although he seemed fine, he could feel that his aura was chaotic. If he hadn't suffered heavy internal injuries, he wouldn't have caused an expert's aura to be chaotic to this degree. Higashio Motetsu felt his intense gaze and pursed his lips. Xiao Su was right. He had lost 40% of his internal strength, and his internal injuries were serious. Of the remaining 60%, he could only use 50%. This person was truly terrifying. If it wasn't for the Moon Palace's Qinggong, he would have been discovered as soon as he entered the palace. He met the gaze that couldn't be ignored, and the smile on his lips faded a bit. To be able to make such a direct threat, "I'm afraid it's only you, His Royal Highness." "You're right, there's a message, but this young master feels that I've been treated unfairly, so I refuse to pass on the little girl's message." Higashio Motetsu's words made Xiao Su's pupil shrink. The excitement in his eyes wasn't because of Higashio Motetsu's arrogant threat, but because of the last sentence, the little girl's message. Chapter 1334. They had never seen someone who didn't play by the rules like this. He clearly knew how worried they were about the little princess, but he kept them in suspense at this time. Water Spirit and the others were filled with anger. They pointed their swords at Higashio Motetsu without any explanation. Turin coldly said, "Don't make a final struggle. What message does my little princess want you to pass on? If you don't say it, don't blame us for being impolite." Higashio Motetsu's eyes swept over the sword that was right in front of him. He looked at Xiao Su with a roguish expression and said in an irritating tone, "His Royal Highness, how can your subordinates not have any manners at all? And if my hand trembles, it doesn't matter if I lose my life. But the important thing is that the little girl's message will sink like a stone into the sea." Everyone was so angry that their teeth itched. Huo Ling wanted to ask his master to give a girl to him, but he would definitely pry open this person's mouth. At this time, Xiao Su raised his hand, "Put down your swords." Although they were unwilling, Turin and the others still put away their weapons. Higashio Motetsu shrugged and continued to pour tea into his mouth. "Ian, what message does she want you to pass on?" Xiao Su's voice sounded again, but it was different from before. This time, there was a slight fluctuation in his emotions. Although it was very subtle, Higashio Motetsu still caught it. His hand that was holding the teacup paused, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. In the end, he still put down the teacup and calmly looked at him. "She wants me to tell you that she is fine and is not in danger right now." And Xiao Su was very happy with the first half of what he said. His heart, that had been hanging for the past few days, could finally relax a little. After so long, this was the first time he had been separated from her for so long. Moreover, it was in a situation where he didn't know if she was in danger. Although he was calm in front of his subordinates, he was actually very anxious inside. He wasn't afraid that he couldn't save the little fellow, but he was afraid that she would be treated inhumanely during this time. Because in this world, it only took a moment to make a person wish they were dead. He was afraid that before he arrived, the little fellow would be hurt. That was something his life couldn't bear. However, the second half of what Higashio Motetsu wanted to say made Xiao Su narrow his eyes again and coldly look at him. As a man, daunting Wang Yu found it hard to open his mouth because of what the little girl had said. However, when he felt Xiao Su's cold and sharp gaze, he sneered inwardly. Sure enough, it was not easy to be a mouthpiece. But at this point, it would be unreasonable to delay any further. He leisurely brushed away the non-existent dust on his clothes, and then coughed lightly before saying, "I asked her if she had anything else to pass on besides that message. She said no, because she believed that you would keep her safe, so there was no need to say anything else." Just how much trust did she have to have in order to entrust her life to him without any hesitation? Higashio Motetsu raised his head and looked at the person in black robes with a silver mask sitting in the shadows. He was clearly in existence as cold as ice. So why was he able to receive such treatment from a person who was as bright as the warm sun? Could it be that only extremes could keep extremes? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but shake his head. He wanted to smile, but his heart was abnormally bitter. Xiao Su didn't notice Higashio Motetsu's reaction. His heart, which had been tense all this time, had softened because of those words. His fingers on the table moved slightly, as if he was tracing the beauty's face. His eyes rippled with gentleness, but that emotion only lingered for a moment before it was completely restrained. Although the little fellow was safe and sound right now, it didn't mean that she wouldn't be threatened because of him. The little fellow hiding her identity on the battlefield was only a bargaining chip that Father Emperor used to blackmail him. The person that Father Emperor truly wanted to deal with was still him, but the little fellow would inevitably be affected. This young master will ask a question. What is the real reason the little girl is under house arrest in the Imperial Palace? When he finished speaking, Xiao Su remained silent. Higashio Motetsu felt bored and took the initiative to talk. However, as soon as he said this, he clearly felt that the fierce cavalry around him were emitting dense anger. He couldn't help but fan harder. This master and servant were really strange. One was covered in cold air, while the other was covered in fire. If it wasn't for the little girl, he wouldn't be willing to come here to experience the two worlds of ice and fire. The matter of the little princess going on the battlefield was exposed. His Majesty is using this to blackmail Master into canceling the engagement because the fourth prince has taken a fancy to my little princess. Receiving Master's approval, Hualing hatefully said the truth. The last sentence was said through gritted teeth. The hand that was fanning suddenly stopped. Higashio Motetsu was in disbelief. He only learned after the incident of falling into the water that Xiao ran like the little girl. He hadn't thought that things would develop to this degree. Even the Sichuan emperor was biased. And Xiao Su, as the legitimate imperial son, was favored to this degree by his father emperor. It really made people sympathize with him. But when he thought of the recent events in Jingdo, he couldn't help but be even more shocked. He feared that the Sichuan emperor's goal was not just this. He couldn't help but be terrified when he thought about it. King of England, you aren't really going to exchange the little girl, are you? Faced with Higashio Motetsu's question, Xiao Su smiled coldly. This king is not the kind of person who is greedy for life and afraid of death. Higashio Motetsu couldn't help but tighten his grip on his fan. The situation had changed. The Sichuan emperor wanted to force Xiao Su to make a move, and Xiao Su's attitude just now had undoubtedly made it clear that he intended to fight to the death with the Sichuan imperial family. He hadn't made a move yet because the little girl was still in the other party's hands. Thinking of the conditions that Father Emperor had mentioned before, Xiao Su's expression was indifferent. Father Emperor had proposed a very stupid exchange. Even if he gave up on himself, he couldn't give up on the little fellow. "You're still not leaving?" Higashio Motetsu was deep in thought when he suddenly heard Xiao Su's cold voice. His mouth couldn't help but twitch. Burning the bridge after crossing the river was so natural. However, he couldn't stay for too long. Otherwise, if his father found out, he wouldn't be able to explain himself. But after standing up, he looked straight at the person behind the table. "Xiao Su, if you want to save the little girl, if you need me, Higashio Motetsu, feel free to ask." He was talking about Higashio Motetsu, not the Moon Palace. Xiao Su understood what he meant, but coldly refused. This is this prince's family matter. There's no need for young Master Dongting to worry about it. Higashio Motetsu's mouth twitched. This person was really unreasonable and possessive. If the little girl didn't really treat him as a friend, he probably would have been chopped into pieces. In fact, he didn't understand Xiao Su. Xiao Su was used to solving his own problems and never borrowed the help of others. Moreover, although Higashio Motetsu was the little girl's best friend, he was also a member of the Moon Palace. It was already extremely benevolent of him to personally deliver the message. There was no need to drag him into this because sooner or later they would meet on the battlefield. Then just pretend that this young master didn't say anything. Higashio Motetsu pursed his lips and turned to leave. At this time, a voice came from behind him. "The people in the estate can treat your injuries." Chapter 1335. The injuries on his body were very serious. Although they couldn't see the extent of his injuries, his chaotic aura was proof enough. Moreover, it seemed that he had been injured for a while. If this dragged on, his internal organs would be affected. That was why Xiao Su made this suggestion when he was about to leave. However, the other party didn't seem to care at all. This is this young master's problem. There's no need for Lore to worry about it. Higashio Motetsu was also a conceited person, so he returned the other party's words without changing a word. This person doesn't know what's good for him. Master is doing this for his own good. It's fine if he doesn't appreciate it, but he's still so rude. After Higashio Motetsu left, Hualing complained indignantly. Higashio Motetsu's identity is there. It's not easy for him to come and deliver information. Don't complain. The most important thing now is to think about what to do now, Water Spirit said as she rolled her eyes at Hualing. Hualing nodded. Thinking about it, she agreed. Actually, his injuries shouldn't be serious. Why does it feel so strange? Ethereal frowned. Everyone looked at each other. They didn't know anything about this unpredictable Higashio Motetsu. At this time, Turin frowned and asked the person in the seat of honor, "Master, do you think young Master Dongting's words are trustworthy? After all, we are enemies with the Moon Palace. Could it be a trap?" This king believes in Iron. Xiao Su's expression was calm. Water Spirit and the others nodded. Their master's judgment had never been wrong. They believed in him unconditionally. "Then what should we do?" Hualing asked. After pondering for a moment, Xiao Su turned to Water Spirit. "How's the progress of your investigation of the battle 15 years ago?" After being reminded by her mistress, Water Spirit finally remembered this. Recently, Pigeon Feather's energy had been focused on the little Wang Fei. She had forgotten to report this matter. She immediately stepped forward and said, clearly, someone did cause trouble in the battle 15 years ago. The Fu family was the supervisor of the army and only knew how to talk on paper. They interfered with Chuda Laoi's march and caused the entire army to be wiped out. Because of the right prime minister's exoneration, the instigator escaped punishment and was promoted and moved to Jingdo. However, I suspect that things aren't that simple. The Fu family's people have never been good people. There is nothing they can't do. Those tens of thousands of lives were sacrificed just like that, damn. Hualing spat out, his eyes filled with disgust. The rich are not benevolent. The officials are not righteous. How many eunuchs are not like this? Ethereal, who had been silent the entire time, shook his head and sighed. Xiao Su raised his hand, and the people below immediately quieted down. He said in a heavy voice, "This matter is similar to Ben Wang's guess. Water Spirit, secretly send the evidence of this matter to the left Prime Minister's Fu. He will naturally know what to do when the time comes." Water Spirit nodded. "Does Mistress want to use this matter to delay the left Prime Minister and the right Prime Minister while they are fighting?" Xiao Su nodded. "And since we already know Ian's location, then we don't have to wait any longer. We can use their infighting to attract attention and make it easier for us to act." Mistress is right. His Majesty wants to use the right Prime Minister to suppress the left Prime Minister and control us. In reality, he doesn't know that you have never conspired with the left Prime Minister. Even if the left Prime Minister's faction falls, we won't lose anything. Hualing smiled mischievously and continued, "We have given the left Prime Minister a weapon to counterattack. When the time comes, when they fight, we will be the ones to benefit." Turin gave Hualing a chestnut. When Hualing bared his teeth, he said coldly, "You speak as if we are bandits. Pay attention to your words." Hualing rolled his eyes at the sky. Xiao Su continued, "Turin, send hidden guards to infiltrate the imperial palace. No matter what method you use, you have to figure out the guards and the layout around Yuran Palace and determine the rescue route." Turin immediately accepted the order. Then he raised his head and said seriously, "But Mistress, even if we determine the rescue route, we can't act rashly. The elite troops will only arrive outside the capital after 10 days. The other fierce cavalry are also on the way, but the fastest group will arrive in 3 days." Xiao Su's eyes were indifferent without any warmth, as if he was thinking. He was silent, and everyone was silent as well. Just when everyone thought that he would not speak again, his sharp gaze swept across everyone in the room, and his thin lips moved slightly. "This prince knows, so Earth Spirit, this prince will give you at most 3 days' time. No matter how tight the security is, this prince will not care what methods you use, but you will dig a path out of that impregnable fortress. 3 days? Could it be that Mistress won't wait for the elite troops to arrive before making a move?" Everyone was shocked, but the mistress in front of them, although she was sitting there with a clean and elegant temperament, the coldness emitted from her body made them tremble involuntarily. Their mistress had always been a man of her words. No one dared to question or refute her decisions. Moreover, this was related to the young princess's safety. In the past, Mistress was not willing to leave Mistress' side for even a day, let alone now that several days had passed. The battle this time was very difficult, but they were going to risk it all, whether it was for the young princess or for the anger in their hearts that had been suppressed for so many years. Yes, this subordinate obeys. Turin and the others bowed their heads and solemnly accepted the order. Xiao Su shifted his gaze and looked out of the window. The moonlight was just like usual, but the little fellow beside him was not here. In his eyes, the moonlight was so lonely. "Little fellow, wait for 3 more days. I will definitely bring you back safely." The night retreated, and the sun rose from the horizon. The people who were working at sunrise picked up their hoes and leisurely went to the fields. The mountains and fields were filled with a peaceful atmosphere. The stalls and peddlers in the city also began to do business. The streets were filled with people who got up early to buy vegetables. It was bustling with noise and excitement, and the world was peaceful. However, in one part of the capital, it seemed as if dark clouds were shrouding it. The atmosphere was so heavy that it seemed as if water was about to drip down. Servant girls went in and out, and the basin in their hands was filled with blood. It was very frightening. Everyone was silent, not daring to make a sound. The entire prince's mansion was deathly silent. After half an hour, the atmosphere relaxed a little. The housekeeper stood by the bed and said with tears in his eyes, "Lord, you were injured so seriously. How could you get out of bed without permission? Look, your wound has split open again." The doctor said that if you don't cherish yourself, I'm afraid. Lin Jiangdong stood at the side and couldn't help but say, Lord, it's all thanks to the doctor's superb medical skills. Otherwise, it wouldn't be as simple as going to the gates of hell. The person on the bed who was scolded by everyone looked at the top of the bed with an ashen face. Ever since he got out of bed to see Pang Zhijing's body, he had vomited blood and fainted before he could walk out of the room. When he woke up again, he looked like this. No one knew what he was thinking. At this time, a guard came in and reported softly, Lord, Crown Prince Pang has arrived and said that he wants to visit you. Chapter 1336. Crown Prince Pang is here. Lin Jiangdong furrowed his brows in deep thought. When Wang Yi went to the bottom of Feng Time Mountain to look for someone, he had clearly rejected Pang Huang and said that the cooperation was invalid. At this time, he came again. It was not as simple as just visiting a patient. Thinking of this, Lin Jiangdong immediately turned to the person on the couch and asked, Your Highness, do you want to see Crown Prince Pang? At this time, the pair of absent-minded eyes slowly regained their spirit. However, compared to the past, it was only the difference between a firefly and starlight. No, it was a simple word, but it was filled with endless coldness. Lin Jiangdong had already expected this result. Lord had blamed Pang Huang for injuring the princess. In the eyes of many, this was just a trivial matter. However, he knew that Lord was truly angry. Previously, he had underestimated Pang Zhijing's position in Lord's heart. The guard returned and stood in the room with his head lowered. Crown Prince Pang said that Lord is heavily injured and won't disturb you. However, he asked that you return the princess body. After all, she is their southern blue princess. It is inappropriate to leave her in the prince's mansion. When these words were spoken, the room fell into a dead silence. Even Lin Jiangdong and the housekeeper didn't dare to make sound. Who didn't know that Lord was like this for the sake of the southern blue princess? He ignored his own injuries and personally went to the bottom of the cliff to search for her without rest. In the end, the beauty had already passed away and only a broken body was left. They had never seen Lord so sorrowful. Even when he woke up today, he still wanted to see the southern blue princess. Such deep attachment made people unable to bear to see him like this. At this juncture, Crown Prince Pang actually dared to come and ask for the princess. This was simply hitting the muzzle of Lord's gun. Let him take her away. Just when everyone thought that Lord would be angry, they heard him calmly say this. Lin Jiangdong thought that he had changed and was no longer tied down by love. However, when he looked up, he saw a trace of pain on that handsome and elegant face. He couldn't help but be surprised. Yes, the guard accepted the order and left. All of you can leave as well. Xiao spoke again. Everyone knew that the most important thing for him now was to rest, so they all retreated. After a while, only the butler and Lin Jiangdong were left in the room with a bowl of medicine in their hands. Is something the matter, sir? Lin Jiangdong knew that this wasn't the time to talk about business, but this was a special case, so he could only brace himself and report. Yes, there's a matter regarding your engagement with the Southern Blue Nation. Xiao glanced at him indifferently, indicating for him to continue. Lin Jiangdong did not dare to delay and quickly said, Princess Zhijing died in an accident, and the Nansong Kingdom expressed their deep regret. In order not to delay the marriage between the two countries, they have sent another princess from the capital. She is now on her way. His Majesty said that as soon as the princess arrives, they can get married immediately. After saying this, Lin Jiangdong immediately lowered his head, not daring to look at the person on the bed. When Xiao heard this, his lips curled up slightly, revealing an extremely light smile. Yes, Xiao's gaze turned cold as he turned to look at the exquisite lock in his hand. The cold sensation was similar to what little rascal had said to himself that day. She was only a tool for a marriage alliance. It didn't matter if she was the princess or not. As long as that person represented the Southern Blue royal family, it was enough. Was that why Nansong had sent a replacement, before her body had even turned cold. But did they really think that Xiao, was a garbage collection place? Perhaps in the past, he would have sacrificed his life for revenge. But now, it was impossible. Send a letter to Imperial Father. Tell him that this prince can only give the position of princess consort to Pang Zhijing. She is this prince's only wife, and before this prince passes away, I will not marry again. As for the marriage, tell him to find someone else. Xiao calmly said these words, but it set off a storm in the hearts of the other two people present. Lord, you absolutely can't do this. Have you forgotten our revenge plan? If you do this time, His Majesty will definitely be suspicious of you. Originally, when they went to the bottom of the cliff to search, they had already exposed their manpower. If it wasn't for His Majesty's attention being focused on Xiao Su, they would have already been exposed. If something else happened, His Majesty's suspicious nature would definitely attract His Majesty's attention. There's no need for nonsense. Do as this prince says. Xiao's face turned cold, his voice chilling to the bone. Lin Jiangdong knew that he couldn't change Lord's decision, so he could only sigh and agree. In the end, he helplessly left the room. The housekeeper walked to the bed and said to Lord, who had his eyes closed, Lord, this is the medicine that the doctor told me to brew. It's very effective for your injuries. Please drink it while it's hot. Xiao said without thinking, leave it there. The housekeeper looked troubled. Lord basically didn't drink the medicine these past few days. If this continued, it wouldn't be good for his injuries. He was silent for a while before speaking gently. This old servant remembers that when the princess was in the prince's manor, she also avoided the medicine. However, every time she was in front of Lord, she would obediently drink it. This old servant can see that the princess is very dependent on Lord and also very fond of him. If the princess was still here, she would definitely think of all kinds of ways to make you drink the medicine. If she was still here, I don't know how to make fun of me. She has never been one to suffer losses. The hoarse voice suddenly stopped laughing. The housekeeper couldn't help but look at the person on the bed as if he was lost in his memories. His expression was lonely and dejected. Lord, please restrain your grief. Xiao's lips twitched slightly. He wanted to smile, but couldn't. His eyes were filled with sorrow. After his mother left, they said their condolences to him. After the little rascal left, they also said their condolences to him. This sorrow, how could he control it? Just as the housekeeper sighed and prepared to leave the piece to his lord, he suddenly heard a trembling voice. Give the medicine to this king. Hearing this, the housekeeper was overjoyed. He immediately reached out to help his lord up and then handed over the bowl of medicine. Xiao drank the medicine in one gulp, and the bitterness spread through his mouth. It seemed like the little rascal was very afraid of this taste. She was someone who liked sweet things, but not bitter things. Every time she drank medicine, it was torture. His eyes became much gentler. His pale fingers rubbed the exquisite lock as he thought back to every time she came to find him with the sound of the bell. That sound was clear and pleasant to hear. Now that he was shaking the exquisite lock, he didn't have that feeling. Actually, in the end, he didn't have any intention of using the exquisite lock to trap her. It was just that he liked the sound of the exquisite lock coming from her body. Listening to the sound of the exquisite lock coming from afar, he could use the speed of the sound to guess what her mood was the entire time. Using the details to distinguish. This was the highest level of expressing love. It was a pity that the two of them never understood it. At this time, another guard rushed in. Lord, there is a scholar outside who wants to see you. He says he has evidence of the Luo family being wrongly accused 21 years ago. Chapter 1337. As soon as the guard finished his words, Xiao tightened his grip on the exquisite lock. Bring the man in. His deep and cold voice trembled slightly. For so many years, he had been searching for evidence of the Luo family's wrongdoings and wanted to reverse the verdict. Unfortunately, too many years had passed, and those related to that year had been buried in the yellow soil. The remaining culprits were free and unfettered, and it was impossible to pry valuable information out of them. Lin Jiangdong rushed over after hearing the news and stood beside the bed with a solemn face. At this moment, the man was brought in. It was a middle-aged man, less than 40 years old. He was dressed in coarse linen clothes, and his shoes had several holes in them. Although he looked like a poor scholar, the vicissitudes of life couldn't conceal his youthful handsomeness. His body was thin, but his back was straight, and he had the pride of a scholar. Before entering the room, the man's face was filled with arrogance. After entering the room and seeing Xiao Ho lying on the bed, his expression changed. He stared at Xiao Ho for a moment, and it was hard to tell what he was looking at. "How dare you? Salute our Lord when you see him." The guard beside him scolded coldly. The man came back to his senses and bowed. "Wang Yu greets your Highness Prince C." Xiao Ho leaned against the wall of the bed and coughed a few times. Only then did he look at the person who had been sizing him up the moment he entered the room. Although his gaze wasn't disgusting, it was still displeasing to have someone look at him so unscrupulously. "Who are you?" Xiao Ho asked slowly. After Wang Yu bowed, he looked at Xiao Ho with a bit of affection in his eyes, but he didn't answer the question. "I heard that Wang Ye was injured. How is his injury? Is it serious?" The man's inexplicable concern made Xiao Ho narrow his eyes. Lin Jiangdong's face changed, and he immediately scolded. "Lord asked you a question. How can you change the subject? What are your intentions for entering the mansion?" As he spoke, Lin Jiangdong had already ordered people to detain him. Wang Yu was a scholar after all, and he had never practiced martial arts. His body was weak, and his face turned pale at once. Fine beads of sweat appeared on his forehead, but he didn't seem to care. He looked at Xiao Ho gently and said with concern, "I learned 2 days ago that you were seriously injured and in a coma. I was worried, so I came to the city to see you." This man's words sounded like nonsense to everyone. Lin Jiangdong peeked at Lord's gloomy face and then turned to the guard. "Why didn't you ask him clearly before bringing him in? Don't you know that your Highness can't afford to waste time dealing with these muddle-headed people?" "He Jingdong, Wang Yu's name." "Your Highness, my name is Wang Ju. Over 20 years ago, our Wang family was friends with your mother's Luo family. Perhaps you're unfamiliar with me, but I know you very well. Wang clan? You are?" Xiao Ho originally ignored him, but when he heard him mention the Luo family, his eyes widened. He couldn't hide his surprise, and his eyes were full of inquiry. "Does your Highness know of the Wang family that was the governor of Jiangnan 20 years ago? This commoner is the eldest son of the Wang family," Wang Yu said with a warm smile. Xiao Ho's eyes flashed with surprise. "So you were the one who had an engagement with my mother?" "Correct." Wang Yu nodded, but his eyes dimmed. "If it weren't for that accident, perhaps your mother and I would be living a warm and peaceful life now. You say you were the young master of the Wang family. Do you have any proof?" Lin Jiangdong asked after looking at him suspiciously. It was better to be careful in this kind of matter. Wang Yu glanced at the guards holding him. Xiao Ho raised his hand, and they withdrew. Wang Yu also regained his freedom. He rubbed his wrist, which was hurt, and then took out a jade pendant. Someone quickly took it and handed it to Xiao Ho. "This is polished from Yuanyang stone. Half of it was polished into a jade bracelet, and the other half was polished into this jade pendant. This is the engagement token between your mother and I. Your grandfather gave it to me. He said it was the family heirloom of your Luo family. You should have seen your mother wear that jade bracelet." Hearing Wang Yu's explanation, Xiao Ho touched the jade pendant, which was almost the same quality as the family heirloom left by his mother. His mind shook. He put the jade bracelet on Little Rascal, but in less than 3 days, it was back in his hands. "It is indeed the family heirloom of our Luo family." Xiao Ho returned the jade pendant to him. "So you believe my identity?" Wang Yu looked at Xiao Ho with some joy. Xiao Ho didn't answer and asked, "Back then, the Luo family was searched and the Wang family was inexplicably silenced. Why are you still alive?" "Back then, the Wang family was assassinated by unknown people, and I went abroad to study and escaped. When I came back, it was a scene of desolation. Everything was the same, but the people were different. Although so many years had passed, he still felt grief every time he mentioned it. You said you have evidence of the Luo family being framed 21 years ago. What is it? Xiao asked in a low voice. Wang Yu's expression flickered, and a difficult look appeared on his face. Seeing the change in Wang Yu's expression and his hesitant look, Xiao's face suddenly sank. Although there was still a smile on his lips, it didn't reach his eyes. Young Master Wang, are you trying to say that you don't have any evidence at all? Wang Yu couldn't help but sigh when he heard this. He looked sincerely at Xiao. This happened more than 20 years ago. Even if you were wronged, your mother didn't want you to be involved in the political power struggle back then. Moreover, in your current situation, it's not suitable for you to know these things. Now that I see you safe and sound, I'm relieved. Just pretend I never came. Xiao coldly snorted. Do you think this king will let you leave this place so easily? If you don't hand over the evidence, then don't blame this king for not considering our old friendship. Wang Yu shook his head and said earnestly, Your Highness, you are living a peaceful life now. Don't think about the past. Before your mother died, she must have told you to live well and not pursue the past. Xiao found his words laughable. This king wants to live well in order to redress the Luo family's injustice and avenge my mother. Back then, my mother was still thinking of you before she died, but she didn't expect you to be such a cowardly person. My mother's feelings for you have really been wasted. Wang Yu's eyes were filled with pain. Cece must have had a very painful time in those years. I didn't protect her well. Do you have any evidence in your hands? Xiao glanced at the pain in his eyes. He knew that this person was also infatuated with love, but the most important thing now was to obtain the evidence in his hands. Originally, I had planned to take this secret to the grave. If I hadn't heard that Your Highness was seriously injured and on the verge of death, I wouldn't have risked my life to ask Your Highness for a meeting. However, it's fine. I don't have the ability to redress the Luo family's injustice. Perhaps Your Highness can do it. When Wang Yu said this, his chuckle was filled with helplessness and grief. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.